Welcome to the world of tomorrow. You are about to take a journey out of this world into the world of the future.
The atomic age was born.
The world of tomorrow became the world of today,
bringing together all people in a new era of understanding.
Good sense requires that all of us prepare for any eventuality.
Imagine, if you can, an electronic brain operating at millionths of a second speed.
Electrical pulses transmitted with the speed of light.
Limitless power at man's command. On man's wisdom, on his firmness in the use of that power, depends now the future of his children and his children's children. But wisdom demands, too, that we take time to understand this force.
Combat Information Center is alert. Its radars probing the darkness, ready to give early warning of any unseen enemy.
But have no fear, we are monitoring the situation. Bienvenidos.
Hola, ¿qué tal, muchacho?
Y para su conveniencia se habla español.
Budweiser.
I always, that was always my favorite thing. La película pasada de Will Smith.
I used to watch soccer on the Spanish channel at home when I was a kid. And, that's, of course, the famous, the guy who's like, goal!
Yeah.
Anyway, my favorite were the color commentators, because they would every now and again flip from very rapid Spanish. My Spanish was very minuscule to begin with, but they would just pop in those very English-sounding names, like Will Smith, anyway,
Coca-Cola,
Budweiser.
When I lived in the Southwest, there's all the Mexican stations are on down there.
Yeah.
And there was this show that used to be on called Super Blablazo. And I always loved the name Super Blablazo. And so then there was a gas station in Phoenix called Super Pumper, but I would only pronounce it Super Pumper.
No, it's so good. It's so good. Super duper. Yes.
Oh, man.
So the World Cup, speaking of football, the World Cup is coming stateside.
There is nothing I could care less about than soccer, but what I do care about is watching these Europeans come over here and love the hell out of the American South.
Well, the American South might be the last fascinating part of the world, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It is crazy. I mean, you're there now.
We know what's cool, and I saw somebody talking about this on a podcast. They said, because the Americans are just loving the fact that you've got these Europeans who are always trashing us coming over going, oh my God, America's amazing, right? And they were like, but if we went over there and we're like, oh, Europe's amazing, they'd be like, of course it is, you dumbasses.
Yeah.
We told you that all along.
Right.
And it's just, we just want to share our greatness. We're like, come. Like this one Scottish guy was like, I've been invited to 600 barbecues. If I tried to go to all the barbecues, it'd take me 3 years.
I can't eat all that. I can't. It's like, this is one serving. It's for my whole family.
And then you've got Freddie the chairman.
Oh man, the Germans! God, Germans are hilarious. Were you at all like conscious, aware of the World Cup back in 1994?
No, not even a little bit.
So I was in college during the World Cup in 1994, and I was working at a very fancy schmancy bed and breakfast in Bar Harbor, Maine.
That's a cool little town.
Yeah, great town, great place, and it's about 5.5 hours north of Boston. So it's up there.
Yeah, it's a hike. It's way up there.
Yeah, it's way up there. So, but somehow in some, I know what it was. So I worked at what was called a 4-diamond resort, and a 4-diamond resort is like the apex of travel luxury, and if you were a person of a certain, wealth, you could get this sort of do the World Cup in fancy schmancy style. So we were on, our bed and breakfast was on some kind of like magazine. So like, if you're going to come see a game in Boston, you must pop up to Bar Harbor, spend the weekend. And this is these are two great resorts, both, Four Diamond resorts, etc. So all summer long, we had a series of Europeans come up to Bar Harbor. Now, it's a 5-hour drive. It's a 5-hour drive.
No,
so
it is far. It
Yeah.
is far. Like from southern Maine, it's far.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So anyway, we had a host of hilarious, what would you call them? I mean, again, I don't mean this, but like, how there's this whole meme of like the Euro, wealthy Euro sleaze. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
It's like, it's
It's
not
like
exactly
the tech vests and the frosted tips.
Yes, all that,
Yeah.
not it's not the classy, sort of snooty Brit thing. It's like this other jet setter Euro thing. Anyway, we had a series of people coming up, and the Germans were hilarious. There was a scene. This is a true story. So I did everything at the bed and breakfast. I worked the front desk. I was a bellhop. I cooked in the kitchen in the mornings. I did all these different kind of things depending upon the day. And this one day, this Jag rolls up, a rented Jag rolls up, and out popped this. I would say was this German guy, probably in his, let's just call it his 50s, right? At the time, of course, I was 20, so he just seemed ancient. Of course, that's how old I am now. And, handsome enough fellow. But anyway, out of the passenger seat comes this total smoke show I think
you told me this story.
That could not have been 20. I mean, but a total smoke show. So anyway, I bring their bags up and he gives me a tip and I go on down, and at some point later, they asked me for something. I said, hey, Kale, can you grab me this thing? I'm sure it's going to be a while. I'll be back in about an hour. So I pop on up about an hour later and I knock on the door, and, she comes to the door in a towel. I mean, a towel. And he, so the door opens and she comes into town, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. And then he walks through, behind the door, and he's totally naked. And I'm like, oh man, I'm like this dorky.
How old
little,
were you?
20.
Yeah.
I'm like 19. Like, I'm this dorky little college student, and I'm just like, this whole thing is crazy to me, right? And I was like, I am so sorry. And I kind of like turn like this, like avert my eyes, like that kind of thing. He's like, oh, it's okay. He's like, that's what happens when you have lovers. And I'm just like, all right, Hans. I'm not there yet. I mean, I want to be, but I'm not there yet, right? And so I leave, and, like a half an hour later, they come on down, and they're wearing like this very like all white, they're in their like Wimbledon whites or something like this. But forever, it's like, well, that's what happens when you have lovers. I'm like, yes.
Such a great explanation.
Yes, Hans. Yes,
so, I mean, when I had my European semester, we were based in Austria, right? And you're every time you're on the train, you've got the younger version of this.
Yeah.
And so my friends and I just kind of developed this accent that was based largely around just listening to their small talk. Like there was this one dude, he had dreadlocks.
Nice.
And he's sitting with his friends. He's a white guy, but he's got dreads, right? And he's sitting with his friends on the train, and he realizes we're Americans, and he goes, have you ever been to St. Polten? Which is this town not far from where the Austrian campus is. And we're like, no, don't go. It's so fucking stale.
It's stale. And like, I don't know about you, but like when I was that age, like they all seemed vaguely fey to me. Like
totally. So the whole accent, like what we would do is none of us spoke German. So we would just throw in little German phrases that we knew. And we'd be like, Franz is gonna have a Weiss and schreiben Sie on the Tafel. Gehen Sie langsamer.
Please. Like,
oh my heavens, to some of the Betsies.
Do you have a light? I have a, yeah. And so, anyway, it was pretty wild. That summer I had stay at our lovely bed and breakfast, Julia Louise Dreyfus, and this was the heyday of Seinfeld. She was not a pleasant person. Sorry.
Does not surprise me in the slightest.
No. And so that was quite summer, but that was the last time the United States has hosted the World Cup. And I'm probably a little bit more like, I will watch it, especially when America plays. But I love what you're focusing on is like Europeans coming and just doing the American experience.
I mean, if you're not on X, we always tell you're missing out on all the fun stuff.
Great fun.
You're also probably missing out on a lot of needless stress and time wasting. But
hey,
watching on X as these kids go through the American South and post their pictures from Buc-ee's and from
Buc-ee's, yeah.
like, from Alabama and Wendy's. The Wendy's official brand account is like going back and forth with this guy.
Love it.
And they're like, "Where is your Frosty?" Because he showed his Wendy's order. And so the Wendy's account is like in all caps, "Where is your Frosty?" And he's like, "I didn't know. I'll do it next time."
Frosties. I don't know what the Frosties are. Is it time? Is it time for the Frosty?
And Wendy's replies and goes, "It's okay. You're learning."
That Wendy's account has been good for a long time.
Oh, it's been good for a really long time.
They got it. Like it's a good balance of trolling and fun without being mean. Like it's this interesting balance.
Well, I mean, it's contributed one of the greatest phrases in the modern lexicon, which is, "Sir, this is a Wendy's."
Yes, that's right. It's so good.
Like, which is now the phrase we use anytime somebody says anything that, like, what are you even bringing this up in this context for? "Sir, this is a Wendy's."
This is a Wendy's.
Or somebody says something inappropriate. It's the best.
It's so good. It's so good.
So anyway, it's been fun to watch. And I think it's really good for Americans to kind of see their own country again through other people's eyes, especially people who are known for trashing us all the time. And then they come over and they're like, okay. Yeah. Not only that, but they're like, Americans are so cool. They're so friendly. Like the German guys were like, we were going to walk an hour in the rain because we didn't want to pay for an Uber. And they're like, the receptionist at our hotel was like, "I'll just drive you there."
Yeah.
And just so everywhere they go, people like come over, like come to our house, we're having a barbecue, come to our place, so they're just getting this grand tour. And the more they do it, the better it gets.
And especially,
it's very wholesome.
Right. Especially as you move away from the coastal, coastal America, right? East Coast, West Coast, Chicago. Once you move out from those kind of centers, America becomes real, and I know.
Well, and they're going to these SEC stadiums, that are, I didn't realize, but, like massive, in the top 10 biggest stadiums in the world, the number one is a cricket stadium, I think somewhere in India.
Yeah. Okay.
Number two is this huge stadium in Pyongyang, North Korea.
Right.
And then after that, it's like 8 in a row American college football stadiums, all over 100,000 capacity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so these guys are like, I've been to a lot of stadiums. I've never seen anything like this.
And if you've never been to a college football stadium, and perhaps you've been to an NFL stadium, NFL stadiums are great. They're big. These college stadiums are like a solid third bigger.
Yeah, I've never been to them, but I've looked at the numbers. I've been to a number of NFL stadiums, and
you notice it. You get in there, and I'm from Baton Rouge, as you know, and you go to the Tiger Stadium. It's massive, and there is nothing. It borders on a religious experience for me, I must admit. But to be in Tiger Stadium with over 100,000 people, and they're playing like Alabama or one of the Georgia, one of the big games, it's crazy. Like it's crazy.
Well, there's people energy, and I don't know if everybody. I assume everybody picks up on it. I don't know.
I do.
If everyone's consciously aware. Like I remember, I used to when I would drive into Manhattan. I would get a few miles out and I could feel it. I could just feel the energy of everything that was going on there.
Energy. Arnold, that's Arnold. Energy. I
am just here smoking my stogie.
Who's your daddy?
And what does he do?
Come on, stop it. There's that energy.
Are we gonna have to incorporate an Arnold soundboard into this podcast?
I tried looking for E-Bomb's World, which was like an absolute
Was
fixture.
It gone?
It's harder to find. It's not. Yeah, it's not. But dude, I'm maybe a little embarrassed to admit just how much time I spent with that. with the
I'm
boys.
Detective John Kimball. I'm a cop, you idiot.
I'm a cop, you idiot. I'm a cop. Yeah. Hours.
You do a better impression of him than I do.
Hours of it. It was just so good.
Just pushing those buttons.
Yeah. So anyway, I love it. I love the Europeans experiencing sort of the off beaten path America as opposed to New York or Boston or LA or San Francisco. You know, it's kind of again, no shade to those cities. We love cities, both Steve and I, but you know, there really is it. And I think what is absolutely baffling to the European, and through no fault of their own, is just the size of this country is just so extraordinarily large. You know,
you don't know it until you drive across it.
Yeah.
Which I've done more times than I can count.
Yeah, right.
It's like I've driven through the entire continental 48, and it's like, it is crazy how much open space there is.
Yeah.
Like just Texas alone.
Yeah.
When you enter Texas from the east, if you're on the wide part, not on the
I-10.
panhandle.
Yeah,
I-10. It takes 3 days to drive across Texas.
Yeah. There's a great sign right when you hit the Louisiana-Texas line, right outside of Lake Charles, and I think it's like at El Paso, and it's like 987 miles. It's kind of as famous, you know, because usually it's like, you know, New Orleans 60 miles, or you know, Binghamton, you know, 62 miles, whatever. It's like 987 miles, you know, and it's
so it takes 3 days if you're driving at a normal pace. There's going to be people in the comments that are like, I can drive 16 hours a day. Yes, you probably can, and I could when I was younger. Yeah. But now I like to sleep and eat and relax and do things like that. So
in retrospect, it's like what was the hurry?
I think I once drove all the way across the country in 3 days.
So my longest stint is I drove from Baton Rouge on the I-10 heading west. I think I made it all the way to El Paso. I did it in a day.
That's crazy.
I just didn't stop. I mean, I stopped for gas.
That's a long day.
Yeah,
what we would do is my buddies and I would
not advisable.
My buddies and I would go on road trips, and we would just rotate drivers, and then the other one would sleep, and so we would just kind of drive nonstop. Yeah,
we had it down. So we would drive. I went to school at Thomas More College in New Hampshire, and so it was me, my brother, and my best friend, my brother Josh, and my best friend Van. And Van had a car, and so we would leave Baton Rouge around 4 a.m. and we would drive, you know, all the way to D.C., spend the night with my brother who lived in D.C., and then we would drive from D.C. up to New Hampshire, southern New Hampshire. And we had it down. So there were rules, right? There were rules. And the rules is that we were only going to stop for gas.
Okay.
That's all. You know, he had a little like Nissan Sentra. So we were only stopping for gas. And when we stopped for gas, we would always stop at a Subway, at a gas station that had a Subway. Okay. And we would get the foot long, and you would only allow yourself to eat, you know, half of it, and you would save it because you were only, and you were not allowed to get like a big soda. Like, no.
Right, because then you got to pee.
Because you got to pee. So, like, no, so we had it down. We could go, and it was the three of us, so we would stop, fill up, get the Subway, and then rotate drivers, and you just go. I always got like the freaking 3 a.m. in the middle of friggin' Mississippi on the way home, man.
There's nothing, when people are sleeping next to you in a car, it makes you sleepy. It's the worst. Yeah, it's the worst. Absolutely. That thing where you're like shaking yourself trying to stay awake. Oh, I hate that feeling. The worst one that we ever did, but also the greatest, is that I had two of my buddies decided that they were going to go on a pilgrimage to Our Lady of Guadalupe from Steubenville.
Whoa.
And they were like, do you want to come? And I'm like, dudes, I am broke as a joke. I don't have $1 to my name. I got to go home and work the whole Christmas break. Because I got nothing left. And they're like, well, just come. And I was like, they're like, we're driving anyway, just come. So I was like, okay. So I got in. We drove.
How long is that?
I don't know how many miles it is. So we drove from Ohio.
Right.
And then we made it all the way to San Antonio. Okay. And then we had to stop because the muffler got a hole in it. And so it was also a Nissan, but it was one of those old Nissan pickups, like the 5-speed manual, little red rocket, right? And so there was a cap on the back. We threw a mattress back there. It was three of us.
Nice.
So you really couldn't fit three guys in the front seat. So somebody always had to be in the back trying to take a nap or whatever, right? So you could not be back there with that muffler. Like, I was back there when it went, and it was so bad. Yeah. So we had to stop for a day. We did that. We always knew people along the way you could stay with, which was great.
Yeah.
And then from there, just like to Mexico City. And that is a long drive, even
I was
from
just going to
Texas
say,
to Mexico City.
right, I would say from the Texas line to Mexico City is a long ass drive. So
yeah, but that delay killed us. We got there the night of December 12th, which was the feast day. We wanted to get there for the festivities.
Of course, right.
And we got there at like 9 p.m. The gates were locked. We couldn't get into the basilica. But the whole way through rural Mexico, because there's no like major highways that went through Mexico, at least in the 90s when we went. And the whole way through, we're going through these little villages and people are having parades and they're carrying the image and all that. So it was neat to see all of that, even though we didn't get to see it in Mexico City. So from Mexico City, we went to Acapulco, which is on the west coast of Mexico. And then we drove up the west coast and back up through Nogales, stopped in Phoenix. And to visit one of our friends there, and then went all the way to Denver. And then I had to hitchhike back to New York for Christmas break because my friends lived in Denver and in Idaho, and like they were staying out west.
You hitchhiked?
Well, not hitchhike. What I did is I had a cousin who lived in Boulder, and he was a total stoner. And two of his stoner buddies were going home to see their families for Christmas, and so they gave me a ride. They had a sick dog that kept throwing up that I had to take care of in the back seat. And the heater on their car, it was an old Volvo, didn't work. It's December in the Midwest. It was like negative 20 degrees outside.
That's like
so cold.
Yeah, that's straight up dangerous, man. That's
and they're
bad.
like toking up every time we stop, and they're eating just bags of Andy Capp's hot fries. And for 26 hours, they are listening to a Stephen King book. I don't even remember which one it was, but it was awful.
Oh my God.
It was awful. And I'm just sitting in the back seat going, I need to make different life choices.
Yeah, this was
11,000 miles I did in 2 weeks.
Holy crap.
It was crazy. Hey, wait, cheers, man.
Lot.
Okay, hold on. There's yours. You got to pull back. You're not focused. There you go. Yours is so much better than mine.
It's so good.
Oh, and by the way, I asked
good.
you if you got your other thing from them.
I have not.
I got them both. I think she accidentally sent them both to me.
These are great. Those are great.
I can't even see the camera because of how big. This is a mouse pad.
Yeah.
I don't have room on my desk for that. I'm going to have to hang it on the wall.
I mean, it's really a mouse blanket. I mean, let's be honest.
Use that as soundproofing.
I mean, right. The background. That's so good.
Yeah, if I had a wall right behind me, that's exactly where it would be hanging.
Yeah, I love a good road trip. I really do. Like last summer, I took the kids. We went down to my brother's ordination.
Yeah,
in
you
June.
stopped by my house.
Yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah, on the way back. So we went. So on the way there, we drove from Rhode Island, and we left like in the afternoon, and we got to all the way down to Savannah, Georgia. And I'm the only driver because it's one of those rental cars.
Right.
But so I show up to the rental agency, and I think I had reserved like a Camry or something. I just needed something that was like good gas mileage, like whatever, nothing too crazy. Well, so I show up and they don't have anything but one of those like brand spanking new, big Volvo SUVs. This thing was beautiful. Spoiled me for life because I'm like, oh, so that's how it is on the other side.
Exactly.
This thing was just gorgeous. I mean, just gorgeous. Anyway, we drove and drove and drove. The kids loved it because they'd never done anything like that. They just got to, and flying somewhere is great because you get there. But just the process of going and my daughter was just yesterday was saying, oh, Dad, it was so much fun. I loved Georgia, was so cool. And, I got to see it all.
I don't want to be cliche, but like, I don't know, for me, it really is about the journey more than the destination. I'm almost sad when I get where I'm going because it means the trip is over.
That's funny. That's not so much for me. I've always been one of these guys. I've told people this before is I don't really like to travel, but I like to be places. And I like a home base, right? So, like a fake new home, like a fake temporary new home, just like I'm in this place and this is my home base. Cause I get this sort of weird anxiety if I'm in a hotel or something, because I'm like, oh, well, this is only temporary and I know I've got to go. I like to just kind of settle down and sit and I don't know. But I don't know. I don't love traveling anymore.
No, I don't like it as much as I used to, but that's more about my energy levels and things like that. Just getting older has that effect. Yeah. But it's like for me, all the cool stuff, you usually discover it on the way. you know, and
Yes.
I like, and travel writing. I mean, I mentioned this in my most recent thing that I wrote on my Substack, the Skojek File. You should read it. You should read it. But I mentioned that that travel writing for me, like, it's the best way to get out of your head and see the world with a different perspective. But it's because you go looking for the little treasures along the way, the things that you don't expect, the stuff that you drive by and you're like, huh, that's interesting, but no, stop and look at it. You know, like, and it becomes a different experience where the journey itself is like where all the good stuff is. And I'm not saying like the destinations are cool. Like I wrote about each city that I went to or whatever when I did my last road trip, but I don't know. There's just something about the stuff in between is a lot of times where the magic is.
Well, and I like it because it's like this sort of interesting combination of strange, right? Just by its very nature, it's different, right?
Yeah.
But then, like, you know, like, oh, like, and this is true, especially when we were younger. It's less true now. Cue Buc-ee's, but you know, like even like gas stations were kind of different in different places, and they had a different assortment of things. And you know, oh, that's what you know, McDonald's looked like in upstate New York versus you know, Arizona or
because everything wasn't standardized everywhere yet. And,
that's exactly right. There was a kind of a sense of the kind of the local, but everything. You know, there's a great article about this. About 5-6 years ago, it was in this online magazine called Tablet Magazine, and the name of the piece is "Everything is Broken," and it's the article itself is about, you know, sort of the aftermath of COVID and all this sort of stuff. But in it, there's this little section where she talks about traveling, and that traveling, especially upper middle class and upper class traveling, has become an experience of sameness, right? So that, you know, the Starbucks looks the same, the Marriott or the Hilton looks the same, and it's like by design, like all airports look the same, right? There's this sort of, you know, you're just sort of passing through and it's all kind of sheer, you know, it's gray and glass, you know, it's a very specific kind of aesthetic that is very much meant for you not to have an experience of the local or the experience. She goes into this idea of friction, right? That traveling has become a radically frictionless experience, but it's also a kind of an exercise in humiliation in an interesting way.
No, it is, especially air travel.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But you know, the other thing is, though, I think the thing that makes road trips great is if you're traveling with friends, the conversations that you have, you know, you got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Or at least you didn't before everybody was on their damn phone the whole time. But I always enjoyed that.
So you're not going to watch any of the World Cup?
Don't think if there's a way I could watch less than 0,
right,
I would do that.
All right. Well, I know what you are going to watch this week.
Yeah, tonight actually.
Oh, you jerk! Okay.
I already have tickets. I'm going to see Disclosure Day tonight.
Herr Spielberg. Yeah.
Herr Spielberg is making some movie about the aliens.
The disclosure.
Und the disclosure.
und disclosure.
Und.
All right, so people are seeing it now, right? You're seeing on X people, you know, they've got an early pre-screener or what have you. What are you hearing? What are you sensing? What are you anticipating? I'm actually really
actually studiously avoiding anybody who's talking about it.
Okay.
I've seen some stuff that I can't do anything about because it's just like
you
know, quick review, and so usually it's people trashing it, which, you know, I'm fine. More people trashing it means that I'll go in with lower expectations and I'll enjoy it even more. So that's fine too. Yeah. I did see that on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got like a 93% score.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I've seen people say this is Spielberg's best work in decades. It's going to be really interesting to see. But then there's, you know, the aliens or demons people are having a field day with it.
They are, my friend. You know, look, this is a long time, you know, meme of this show, right? That the one thing that sets both of us off, right? I mean, this is right.
What does it say?
UFOs, UAPs, demons, disclosure, and total party, man.
And a total party,
right? You know, so nothing's sort of. And you know, and look, and for both of us, it's certainly more complicated than that, right? But there is this sort of knee-jerk, low-resolution allergy to the whole topic, and I think that this film will probably exacerbate that. I mean,
Well, I mean, I didn't actually watch the interview, but Spielberg made some comments about
good.
how
I was going to bring that
this
up.
issue is going to challenge people's faith, or at least their traditional understanding of faith, and and then you see people acting like what he's offering is a statement of intent. Why would somebody want to make a film that challenges people's faith? It's like, it's not that he's wanting to challenge people's faith. It's that this topic will, because depending on how exclusivist your soteriology is,
explain that for the boys in the back.
Okay, so soteriology is just the theological study of salvation, of the process of salvation, right? And so if you believe that, I think what it really boils down to is that Christ became man for the redemption of mankind's sin, and it was supposed to be one sacrifice, one and done, right? So if there's another intelligent species out there and they're not perfected in some way, they're not immune from sin, they're not in their preternatural state, they're not equivalent to angels or whatever else, then how does that work with redemption? I mean, I had a guy comment yesterday, on something that I put up, and he said there would have to be a whole other gospel, and I'm like, okay, but like, I understand that this is challenging, but maybe you just don't know everything you think you know about God. I don't know.
Yeah.
For me, I can concede the fact that any number of alien encounter things that go on with people could be demons. There's documented hundreds of cases where using the name of Jesus stops an alien abduction or whatever. At least, it's anecdotally documented, but it's documented, right?
Yeah.
So there could very well be any number of these cases that are that. I can concede that. Can you people concede that some of this stuff doesn't fall within that scope at all? It doesn't meet the criteria. It's nuts and bolts. It's something else. Like, it's different. And so,
well, you know what I think
it's diagram.
Well, you know what I think it's going to challenge, right? And I think a lot about this. We have talked about. Can you still hear me? By the way, we've been talking about, like, last time I believe we talked about the idea that it's a bit of voodoo magic that you and I can look at a page. Right. And let's say on the page, it's like, Steve walked across the plain, sword in hand, to attack the bear, something like that. Right. And for what most of us do when we read those words, those black little squiggly lines on the white page, is that we cast images in our heads. And I think, what is it, like 98% of humans do not suffer from aphantasia, right?
I don't know what the number is.
It's pretty high, but
it's a relatively rare condition.
Yeah. And so, but like, that's a little bit of magic, right? That we can look at black squiggly lines on a page and we can recode it into images in our head that we can't visibly see, but we somehow internally see, right? So so we've been talking about this, and I'm arguing, I think, that process that has been with us for the last few thousand years, when we moved into written language, has afforded us any number of advances. We've been able to level up. We are capable of, ironically, sort of deeper and deeper and deeper levels of abstraction and complication and all of that, right? So much to the point where another one of the themes of the show, we talk about that, through physics, right, through squiggly lines of math on a white page, we can figure out how to split the atom, right? I mean, this is truly just kind of crazy stuff when you sort of think about what that is doing. And my argument that I've been making is that, I know that there are other ways to learn besides reading numbers or letters on a page, but we are about to head into this period of time in which a larger portion of humanity are letting go of that kind of superpower. Okay. So much so that we, and now again, I know I can tell a story verbally, like kind of like what I'm doing right now.
This is your post-literacy thing.
Yeah, right. Okay. So even, so we're hearing all of these things. And so anyway, what I'm getting at, and it's a bunch of stuff to unpack here, but that what I think is going to be challenged are the images of reality that we hold in the theater of our minds, such that, for instance, when I say the word demon, what image pops into your head? And I'm not asking you this, just, when I say the word Achilles, what image pops into your head? When I say, the name Helen of Troy, what pops into your head? And I bet it's not Lupita Nyong'o, right?
It's
anyway,
not.
You're right. You get my point, right? So
Right.
that this thing that we do is a kind of constructed interior movie
Mm-hmm.
that we operate with, right? So when somebody says, these aliens or demons, for instance, what are you actually seeing in your head? Like, what is that? How does that word demon register in your head? And what do you see in your head when you see demons? Now, I see something, minus the clown hat and the smile
And
right?
the lollipop.
Part of me sees like the kind of classic demons you would see in like Dante's Inferno, scaly fangs, claws, pitchfork, right? Some like scary and gruesome vision of that. Well, if that's what you're saying, I don't know what to tell you, because the word demon, because those images are have a history and a tradition themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean? Like when you see an angel, I mean, this is another funny internet meme, but when some people see angels, they see, like a harp and a nice flowy white robe with the angel with blonde hair, or do you see this like super duper creepy vision of like an
Right.
eyeballed winged creature from, what is it, Elijah or Isaiah, from scripture, right? So I'm wondering if the panic is that the images themselves that we hold of supernatural reality are actually the things that are being more challenged than the conceptual model itself, and therefore exposing that your conceptual model itself is actually pretty darn low res.
I mean, I definitely think that's part of it, but I mean, from the people that I've heard from directly, it's more about it directly challenging their understanding of salvation. It's really like Christ died for men, not for
so when you say
Beetlejuiceans or whatever.
Yeah. So when you say that, and I could be wrong here. I've never been stuck on the man part of that construction.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always thought that salvation was for all of creation.
Well, I mean, it's not obviously, we don't believe theologically that it's for animals.
Yeah, but we kind of sort of do.
Do we?
Yeah, well, I do. But I know what you're going to say. It's
I'm not going to say anything.
You can say it, Steve.
I'm not going to say anything.
Just say Kale's a heretic. I'm fine. I'm fine. No, but in other words, like all of creation, groaneth for this moment of the incarnation, right? St. Paul tells us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, what does that mean, right? Again, we could unpack the metaphors, et cetera, but my sense of soteriology was it's not like, okay, Steve and Kale, you get to go into this like nice little lovely pillowed room, and Jim and Bob, sorry, you get the sort of the spike-ridden, torture chamber over here, right? And I want to stick with the images of damnation, because what you have found, I think, especially when you went through your own very public, for lack of a better term, deconstruction. We can go back to that word in a little bit. You yourself told me like part of your own personal panic was being haunted by the images of, what is it? Eternal conscious
torment.
Torment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I just think it's way more complicated than that.
I want you to say more.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do. You jerky face.
I don't want to step on this thought because I can see it percolating, and I want it to just finish brewing.
Right. Like what does the resurrection mean, right? Like what does salvation mean? I think these are really good questions, and my point is that I don't pretend to have a high resolution image of this, but I know that whatever images and conceptions that I hold in my head are probably a pale simulacrum at best of some larger, deeper, more fantastic reality. Does that make me a Platonist of some sort?
I don't know.
Probably so. So you invoke soteriology. You invoke the challenge. And I think you're right. I do think that disclosure, broadly understood, however imperfectly any of us understand it, I do think that it's going to wreck folks.
Well, let me give you an example of a reply I got yesterday.
Yeah, go.
Because so I saw there's this guy on X. He goes by the name Cynical Publius.
Yeah.
And I like a lot of what he has to say, but he's quoting Spielberg saying that it's going to, have people, the movie will have people second guessing their own religion. He quote tweets a clip of the interview, right? And he says, this would not mess up even a single Christian. The existence of life on other planets would do nothing to disprove the Bible, and Christians understand that all things are possible with God, etc., right? And he goes on to say he thinks secular humanists would be hardest hit, right? And I kind of responded, or I quote tweeted him, and I said, I've heard from Christians who absolutely believe this would mess up their worldview. It has everything to do with how exclusivist their soteriology is. Then I made a little bit of an error here because I said the reason Galileo got in trouble with Rome wasn't because of a novel scientific theory. It was because he was threatening biblical cosmology, which was true. But I conflated a later development with Galileo where, the earth is believed to be the center of the universe because it's where God became man and redeemed the human race. I've heard that so many times, but I didn't realize that it was kind of a retconning.
Yes.
Heliocentrism was determined by the Holy Office at that time, or at least by the consultors to the Holy Office during the 1600s, to be formally heretical. I mean, that was what they assessed. Galileo was not declared a heretic. He was vehemently suspected of heresy for holding to heliocentrism.
Right.
But it was because, in their view, it directly contradicted what the scriptures had to say about the construction of the cosmos. It wasn't the thing about Earth's centrality because of Christ's incarnation. Again, that was a later development that I mixed those two things up. Okay.
That's
so
fine.
This guy replies to me, and this is the one I was trying to build the foundation to get to. He says, you cannot have another planet full of a civilization with agency, aka the ability to sin, or death without having a second gospel, thus negating Jesus Christ. Why that negates him, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
Any alien that comes here must be a demon. I hope there are billions of planets full of everlasting animals. So he's like, animals, fine. But the minute somebody has agency, we have a problem. Now, I would say theologically there's something there, right? Because Christ assumed human nature in order to redeem it. He didn't assume the nature of some other intelligent species. And it would be weird for us to find out that Christ, came on another planet and saved them, and they don't look anything like us, they don't think anything like us, and yet somehow that salvation extends to us. That doesn't really track for me.
Sure.
It's like, you're not even talking about differences of degree, but of kind. So you would think that there would have to be some kind of unique salvation event for anybody of any race, that wasn't included in the other one because they're different. Because how can you redeem a nature that you don't assume?
Do assume, yeah. That's interesting because it gets into deep issues of Christology as well.
Yeah. So I can understand the objection from that perspective, which is why my take on it is maybe the things that we have been told about this are not the whole story.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can look at it is if I have an alien is standing in front of me and continues to interact either with me or with scientists or whatever, and he doesn't turn into the guy with the pointy horns and the tail, right? Like it's clearly a sentient being of some kind. Well, then I have to update my priors if I thought that wasn't possible. I can't just continue to be like, nope, it's just a demon. He's just continuing to trick us indefinitely. Like, there has to come a point where evidence matters.
Yeah, there's a fascinating sort of flattened epistemology that we all exist in that is almost independent of what we say we believe. You know, and in part, you know, this is kind of what I bang on a bit, you know, with with the twilight of modernity and all of that, that we have unknowingly and radically normalized eminence in a way that I think ancient Christians would just be baffled with the sort of mathematical simplicity of our epistemology.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, and I think what you would say is that has in part been done by the church's desire to codify everything. Right. You know, if you read the church fathers, you know, they say like crazy stuff. I mean, and of course, for me, crazy is not bad, you know,
Right.
But they say just like wild stuff, you know, and, you know, they have a deep, and to my way of thinking, healthy sense of mysticism and weirdness and strangeness that in some way, I think the two groups that are going to be hardest hit by some kind of disclosure, again, theoretically here, we'll see. Well, that's the thing. I mean, we'll see, right? Maybe, are fundamentalists of all stripes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would include lots and lots of our trad friends in that category. And I think hardcore materialists.
Yeah,
I think those are, because I think they're the same thing ultimately.
They are essentially,
yeah.
Which, you know, a lot of people would balk at that, but it's kind of like how, you know, in religious terms, sede vacantis, the people who believe that, you know, there is no valid pope, but they're still Catholic, right? And ultra papal positivists are the same thing. They both invest so much in the office of the papacy, they just come to different conclusions about what it means. You know, one says a pope has to be so perfect, so pure, that the fact that we don't have that means we don't have a pope. And the other are the Mike Lewises of the world, who basically worship every word that comes out of the pope's mouth. Well, at least until he starts saying things you don't like, but that's a different.
That'll be fun. That'll be also, that'll be a different disclosure.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, but I mean, you know, lest people think we're just harping on and on about this for no reason, like, you know, that movie's coming out this week. It's going to be a big deal. Again, I'm going to go see it tonight because it really, technically the release date is tomorrow, but for whatever reason, there's a bunch of showings.
Yeah, they'll give those vigils. It's interesting because it's a vigil like we have
kind
a
of
church
is,
vigil.
although they've got showings all day for it today, but I'm not going to go until this evening.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, you know, we just had this presser on the steps of Capitol Hill on Tuesday.
Dude, wild. I mean, look.
And people don't know about this. I mean, I had a long conversation with Paul Vanderklay yesterday. We recorded an interview that's going to probably go up next week. And we talked about this because we both kind of agreed that, I don't remember if we talked about this on camera or off, because we talked for a while off as well, but we both agreed that the UAP issue and AI are like the two biggest things facing our understanding of our place in the world, in the universe. And so it's like these are fundamentally forcing us to look again at what does it mean to be a human being? What is our role? You know, where do we fit in the food chain? Like, you know, all this kind of stuff. Those two things are going to force us to confront them. And so even people who think that the UAP is nonsense, the UAP issue is nonsense or whatever, you've got to look at the seriousness and amount of the things that are coming out. It's going to confront people whether you think it's silly or not.
Right. So this presser, you know, this is fun because you and I were actually watching it together remotely, and we were texting back and forth during the press conference. And I think it was called by Representative Luna, I think, is the head of the chairwoman of that particular.
She is.
And it's a Tim Burchett and couple other fellas, and then it's Grush, right?
It's Tim Burchett, it's Representative Jared Moskowitz, Representative Eric Burleson.
Yeah.
And then you had David Grush, you had a few other people, you had Admiral Tim Gallaudet was there. There were a lot of people there.
And so there they are on the steps of the Capitol, and folks, I don't know, do you have this thing queued up? Are you gonna
you know what, I was looking right now for what he says specifically about life Like
Right.
that's
So, but before you get to that, just for our audience, what was the press conference about?
it was basically saying it was an encouragement to the president. I don't think it was as deftly handled in terms of its rhetorical outcome as it could have been.
Yeah.
But what they're trying to do is push for President Trump to give immunity to whistleblowers because they're all under all these restrictive government NDAs.
Why would they need immunity? What have they done wrong?
Because if they bring forward the information that they have through a military context about things that they have witnessed, whether programs or events that are classified, they go to jail.
Oh, okay. All right. So,
Yeah.
So there's actually teeth to this.
Yeah, they can't break these classification. And so the trick that seems to keep all these guys in line is they are told what they're allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say, right? And
so they can say they know things, but they can't say the things that they know.
Even then, yes, but even then, like all these guys who have come forward and are playing by the rules,
Yeah.
they have all submitted what they want to say to Doxa Review.
Oh,
So that's
I didn't know that.
The Department of Defense pre-publication review process is called DOPSR. And so
is this why Grush did that submitted that novel?
No, that was Jake Barber. He did that because he was representing it as fiction.
Yeah.
Looking to see what they would redact.
Wait a second, Steve. You mean to tell me that there's an agency in our government that looks at fiction?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
Well, because if you include classified information under the guise of fiction, but it's true information, you're still disclosing classified secrets. Now, if you don't know, if you're just guessing, that's one thing. But if you're a military guy or an intelligence guy and you're read into a program and you write a novel and the novel aptly describes a classified program, then you are revealing classification secrets.
So we don't know how to count an election in one night, but we're going to spend time looking at novels out of fear that it might disclose classified information. That's just funny to me, by the way.
And this process is slow. It takes a lot of time.
Slow roll, right? I mean, you slow roll it to death, right?
But I mean, some of these guys who've written books, like Lou Elizondo, I mean, the DOPSR review on that took 6 months or something like that. I mean, it was not a fast process.
Yeah.
And so you will see these guys, Jim Lukatsky is another one, big scientist that, I mean, he's made the claim not only that we have a craft and we have gotten inside of it, but he says that fact was specifically cleared by the Pentagon for him to reveal.
Wow.
And he's a by the book guy.
Wow.
Like he is a super autist nuclear engineer.
Yeah.
Older, he's probably in his 70s, maybe close to 80s.
Right. Yeah.
And so he's kind of old school of like, I'm a government scientist. I will not reveal anything that I'm not allowed to reveal,
Right.
Which can be really frustrating people. But he's written a bunch of books about this stuff, and every one of them, he's had to get everything cleared. Now, it's kind of like how the Catholic Church does the imprimatur and the Nihil Obstat.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, keep going.
So it doesn't mean just because those things are there that everything that's said in the book is considered true by the church, right? It just means there are no errors.
There's no violation.
No violations, right? And so DOPSR review works the exact same way. It doesn't mean if they approve someone to come forward with something that they're saying that's true. It just means that you haven't said something you're not allowed to say.
Got it.
And so a guy could put something through DOPSR review that's made up, and they're like, well, we're not going to censor that because it doesn't have any basis in reality.
Right.
But so that's why some of these guys will use the negative strategy where they'll put a bunch of stuff in and they'll say, what are they going to redact? Because if they redact it, there's something there.
They're telling you that that's real.
Yeah. And so that was Jake Barber's strategy with submitting the novel.
All right. So we've got this this press conference.
Yeah. So the press conference is designed to get President Trump to take what he's already done, to amplify the fact that this website, war.gov/UFO, has already had over 1 billion hits since it came out last month, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's a crazy amount. And so Trump is now realizing, wow, there's a lot of public interest in this. And if there's a guy who knows that it's important to cater to the public interest. It's Trump, right?
Of course. Yeah.
You know, this is legacy stuff. Like he could go down in history as the president who broke the taboos and said this stuff. But all these whistleblowers who are holding back so much and saying there's more I could say, but I'm not allowed to say it, they're asking for amnesty. Dylan Borland, Jeff Nucatelli, Matthew Brown, David Grush, Lou Elizondo, Jim Lukatsky, all these guys that have come forward, they all have more information. Jay Stratton, who's got a book coming out in October, he used to head up the UAP task force. He's the guy who, in the documentary Age of Disclosure, said he has seen real alien craft and real alien bodies with his own eyes. And this is a high-ranking, Pentagon guy, and he's like, this is what I've seen. That's all I can say, but this is what I've seen, And so they're trying to get to the point where they're, number one, not going to go to jail for violating classification. And number two, they're trying to avoid other forms of repercussions because, we have guys that are just dying mysteriously right before they testify, like Matthew Sullivan.
Yeah.
And that's, I just wanted you to scoot for like another 2 minutes. Just keep scooting.
I'm trying to find my right zone of.
No, it's just funny. It just was one of those visual gags like Lancelot coming at the castle. But yeah, so these guys are scared. I saw this conference where Jeremy Corbell, who's he's a little weird, but he's a real rabid dog when it comes to
he's intense. He's intense.
Yeah, he's very intense. But he said with Dylan Borland sitting next to him on stage, the government told me that what you told them in a skiff was X, Y, and Z. I can't remember what it was. And Borland literally just goes like this, like he's like, why are you doing this on stage?
Right.
And so, but Jeremy's point was they shouldn't be telling me anything that's happening in a classified setting in a skiff that you're discussing with them, number one. Number two, like, would you confirm or deny this? And Borland literally goes, I'm not going to jail. So
wow, that was his
all
response,
I can tell you is if you want me to answer the question that you just asked, make sure I have immunity.
Right.
Push for whistleblower immunity. So that's really what they're trying to do here. But then during the course of this discussion on the steps of the Capitol Tuesday, Grush said something that I caught both of us, right? Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Yeah. And hopefully I have the right thing queued up here because this is always a crapshoot when I share my screen. All right, let's make this full size.
I certainly don't have the compendium. It's a continuum from corporeal, bipedal type life to what I would consider like sentient plasmoid life, but there are several that the U.S. government is aware of.
Like what? Just that, like let's play it back. And I know it's only in the left audio channel. That was how the broadcast actually was. They had their microphones hooked up weird. But he was asked a question about biological life that we have.
I certainly don't have the compendium. It's a continuum from corporeal, bipedal type life to what I would consider like sentient plasmoid life. But
okay, so it's a compendium from corporeal, bipedal life.
Us, I guess, like us.
Somewhat like us. Well, I mean, it would include things like the Nordics, I would assume.
Right, or the scaly ones. What are the scaly ones called again?
The reptilians.
Reptilians, yeah.
Or the mantids. They're also bipedal.
Mantids, that's right. That's
so these are these categories you hear about. I don't know what's real, or sentient plasmoid life. Like what is that?
Like I have no idea.
Did you get that video I sent you yesterday about that though?
No.
Well, let me see if I can find it real quick because there was somebody who posted something and questioned whether maybe this was what Grush was talking about, and it was a
sentient plasmoid life.
Let's pull this up.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're just spitballing here, so
love it.
Let's do this right here. Come on, screen share, do your thing. All right, so this post says David Grush's sentient plasmoids. Filmed by Space Shuttle Columbia. The NASA STS-75 tether incident in 1996 featured a broken 12-mile-long tether swarmed by self-illuminating, pulsating UFOs. A lot of things swimming in the foreground. So you can see these things going by.
Yeah.
Some appear to pass behind it, meaning these plasmoid UAP would be several miles across. I don't know, but I do know that in the latest... let's make this bigger.
Guys,
there's sound.
Franklin, we see a long line, a couple of star-like things, and a lot of things swimming in the foreground. Can you describe what you're seeing?
Well, the long line is a tether, and there's a little bit of debris that kind of flies with us, and it's illuminated by the sun at such low angles. So there's a lot of stray light, and it's getting washed out quickly, but Claude is trying to do a quick, good job here adjusting the cameras.
It doesn't look like debris to me.
No.
Now, I understand it could be lens flare from reflections.
The tether in the
that is possible.
Not lens flare. That is not lens flare.
But there's just like, so anyway, I don't know. I had to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah.
So anyway, like, you know, these videos come up. I mean, in the latest tranche of the UFO documents that the Pentagon released, there's a bunch of stuff from the moon or from the previous moon missions or other space missions where there's like lights flying around, and you're getting the impression that something's going on there. And somebody just said this week to really pay attention to the moon, because there's evidence of there having been structures there of some kind, or
wow.
So I don't know, you know, I mean, we're planning on building a moon base. Artemis 3's crew was just announced. NASA has said we're building a moon base. I know Musk wants to build some kind of facility on the moon to enhance other space projects, because it's easier to build up there than it is to build down here and fly it up there. So I don't know, but I assume we're going to find out one way or the other.
So I guess this is what I mean, you know, getting back to my frustrations with the it's demons thing, is that if that is what you're calling demons, like you're operating at such low resolution that I just don't even, like, what does that even mean? Like, look at that video. What do you mean it's all demons? Like, what is that? Like,
to what end?
Right. I mean, like, what does that mean? You know, and I know it's a little bit easier to think of, like, you and I were if like a mantoid were to walk, you know, into the studio here. I would know what that means. And would I think it might be a demon? Like, I might think that could be a demon. You know, what do I know?
But even then, why?
Right. Because it certainly wouldn't, like, win me over.
Right. Like, there just is no obvious point to this.
Yeah.
So, you know, to what end is this deception? I don't know. There are people who will just say, well, because they want you to doubt the gospel. And so if you believe in aliens, then you'll doubt the gospel. And there is something to be said for the fact that the entirety of the scriptures doesn't really mention the possibility of life outside of humanity, unless, you know, you really want to do a little bit of eisegesis on some of the texts. Like, you can interpret some of them that way.
Sure.
But in no way is it ever clear that God made anyone anywhere else. It's the angels, the fallen angels, and us. That's it. Like, that's all we know about from the Bible. So if you find out there's a bunch of other intelligent races of corporeal and non-corporeal life, then you're gonna be like, well, why didn't God tell us about that in divine revelation? So I mean, that's a real thing.
Yeah. No, that's fair. But, you know, I guess I've always been of the opinion that wishing it were not so is not the same thing as it not being so.
Yeah, exactly.
And so therefore, it seems to me that the responsible point of view on this is, I think, as both you and I have said, like, be a skeptic. Like, that's fine. I mean, I think a basic standpoint of skepticism is warranted. But at the same time, being a skeptic is not the same thing as just dismissing it out of hand definitionally and by necessity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you're not allowed that, actually.
Well, it's just, you're excluding through a priori conclusions. You know, you're not.
Right.
Yeah, I think about there's a good historical precedent when it comes to the study and understanding of the capabilities of microorganisms, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in the 1600s, von Leeuwenhoek comes up with the microscope and starts proving that there is microscopic life. But we don't understand that that's what makes us sick for a long time after that, right?
Yeah.
And there was a real debate in the medical community over how it could be possible that organisms so small we need special instrumentation to even see them could harm humans that are thousands of times their size. And you even get the debate that I think we've talked about on the show before between Oliver Wendell Holmes, the senior, the physician, not the later Supreme Court justice, and the medical establishment.
Not another. Tell me the story.
So there was this disease, they called it death, child bed death, or puerperal fever is what it's known as, medically.
Yeah.
What was happening was there was just a massive number of women who would give birth to a baby, and then they would die of some kind of an infection, within a short period of time. We're talking 500,000 people were killed by this over the span of, I don't know, a couple of decades. And they were trying to figure out what was causing it. And Oliver Wendell Holmes speculated that the reason it was happening is because the way that the normal hospital rotations were, the doctors were doing autopsies in the morning, and then they were doing more of the deliveries in the afternoon, and they weren't sanitizing in between.
Right.
So there was some kind of bacteria that was coming off of the corpses that they were working with that was never being killed through sanitizing practices.
Right.
And then they were infecting the women, when they're giving birth, and then the women and the babies are dying.
Got it. Okay.
And so he's trying to point out, you have to wash your hands, you have to do this, and there was literally a debate. The most esteemed physicians of the time were like, gentlemen's hands could never be the cause of this, kind of thing. But they just didn't have any kind of understanding of how this could possibly be.
Right.
So they couldn't factor in, before we discovered microorganisms, nobody believed that they existed. I mean, maybe the Greeks, because they always knew stuff before everybody. But
yeah.
But like in the modern world, in the post-Enlightenment world, nobody really believed in the entire kingdom of microorganisms. And then Leeuwenhoek proves it to them, and they're like, "Oh, that's interesting." But even then, it's like, well, we don't know what that means. We don't. Yeah. They could have decided they were demons too, I guess. I mean,
well, I was just going to say that, right? So again, if you're looking for available language to explain a phenomena that you don't understand, demons is a pretty handy stand-in, isn't it? Like the tag. And so this is why I was talking earlier about conceptions of a demon, right? What do you picture in your head? Do you picture little microorganisms, or do you picture, a kind of snarling reptilian-like creature with fangs and hooks?
Well, I mean, the thing is, though, we know even from Christian theology that angels and demons are incorporeal, pure spiritual beings that can, under limited circumstances, manipulate corporeal matter, but they don't tend, we don't have a lot of stories of devils taking incarnate form.
Sure.
I'm not aware of any.
Right.
They possess people because they don't have bodies. There's something missing there in the idea that they're just going to manifest in weird spaceships and engage with fighter planes and leave wreckage behind and leave bodies behind that can be autopsied, which has been claimed. All this stuff.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit. It's a category error as far as I can tell.
Yeah. And I would, again, floating in the dark here a little bit, I would say this is exactly why epistemic humility is probably called for, rather than immediately kind of define and dismiss, to remain open to what it could mean.
Yeah.
Right. We live in a disenchanted world, right? So that, like my mug here is just a mug. It's made out of ceramic. It's got some kind of coating on it with a picture on it. It's holding water right now. We don't think of this as having a spirit, right? And that's kind of what I mean by this sort of flattened epistemology.
Yeah, and then you get things like, this priest who's an exorcist in Nashville, Father Dan Rehill, who said there could be a curse over the Disclosure Day movie for all who watch it. It could have demons provoke them. Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day movie could be consecrated to Satan. Demons could be attached to the movie, and those who watch it could have demonic forces of terror to shake their faith. And this may be a reason not to watch Disclosure Day. Like, what kind of wild ass speculation is this? I don't see that that's helpful. It's superstitious. Like, it's one thing, to have a reasonable suspicion that somebody's trying to introduce something evil through kind of a Trojan horse.
Sure.
But this is a movie about a topic that has a lot of reasons for people to look at it. And to just assume something so outlandish about it and make people afraid of it, I don't know what we're doing.
I mean, I don't want to rule it out.
I do.
Well, I know. No, that's fair. I mean, I'm going to go see the movie.
Like, I don't want to rule it out completely because, again, I think that's what epistemic humility demands.
Yeah. I guess
all possibilities are on the table, but I mean, I want to diminish it to such a small possibility.
Well, like for instance,
it feels irresponsible to me.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm like, I'm with you on this. I'm just trying to tease this out a little bit. Is a snuff film cursed? Right. Work with me here for a second.
No, I'm just like, because my immediate thing is, okay, define cursed. Like,
right. Right. So when I was in 5th grade, I spent the night at my friend Mark's house for his birthday, and there were like 6 or 7 of us there. Classic Friday night sleepover, pizza, and we watched horror films. And I had led a pretty sheltered life when it comes to what I watched. Mom was pretty good about that. And so I never watched a horror film.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go over to Mark's house and we watch back to back Friday the 13th Part 4 and A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1. And that friggin' rocked my world.
Yeah,
man.
I bet it did.
It blew me up. Now, am I saying that the VHS tape that we put inside Mark's VCR and watched on his little 19-inch color TV, like, is that cursed? Your question is appropriate. Well, what do you mean by cursed? Was I cursed by that experience? I was. Again, I know I'm skipping steps.
Idiomatically cursed?
Yeah. Right. That's what I'm getting at, right? That
I mean, because a curse has a meaning.
I know. No.
It has an occult meaning, and
right.
and then it has kind of a colloquial.
Right,
meaning.
And so I'm always wondering, that delta between the literal meaning and the colloquial meaning, that there's something there. I think of, and I don't want to get too dark here, and I'm going to be vague, but it seems pretty clear that a vector for insanity for a non-zero amount of the population is extreme forms of pornography.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that many people will testify that they ultimately undergo gender-affirming surgeries to make manifest what they've been made to feel is true about themselves because they indulged in certain forms of pornography. So is that, I mean, is that a curse?
I mean, my inclination is to say it's conditioning, because our minds are very susceptible to certain types of conditioning.
So how is that not a curse?
Because a curse, because again, I think of a curse as an occult action to bring about some kind of preternatural power that accomplishes some thing.
Like literal witchcraft is what you're talking about.
Like that's what curses really are.
Yeah, no, and I get that. I'm arguing, I guess, or wanting to leave space for forms of witchcraft that are not literal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to prove it. Like it could be that those things are occult. Like the idea that somehow, I understand that, extreme pornography dehumanizes to an extent that, You often find that kind of stuff in the history of like serial killers and things
Yeah,
like
right,
that,
right, of course, right.
because they begin to just see people as objects to be used for whatever.
Me. Yeah.
You know, but then there's also this thing where like somehow you want to change your gender. Like that to me is when it gets fundamentally like what's going on.
Well, you know, you and I have talked about this, I guess, maybe, certainly offline, but you know, the mind is a really weird thing.
It is.
Like a really weird thing. And you always, was it the Hoffman guy you talk about?
Donald Hoffman, yeah.
Donald Hoffman. Remind me what you
just
what you
basically
about
his thesis is that, you know, human beings, you know, they've run the calculations because I guess they have evolutionary formulas, mathematical formulas to try to understand probabilities when it comes to adaptation and selection outcomes, right? And so all the calculations they've run, the conclusion that his team has come to is that there is a 0 chance that human beings evolved to perceive all of reality. They perceive just enough that we can survive and thrive. And then at that point, the selection pressure drops. So, you know, we are not like pit vipers. We can't see thermal. You know, we're not like bats. We can't do echolocation. Like, there's all these things, these real sensory apparatus that other animals have, colors that we can't see, all these things that are parts of reality. And we just don't have access to them because we don't have the right tools.
Right. So my again, not a challenge to you exactly, but sort of the positive. What if you could hijack that?
I mean, I'm sure that you probably could.
And wouldn't a curse be a form of hijacking that perceptional apparatus?
I think it's something different. I think it's a nomenclature problem. I think it's a nomenclature problem because the occult mechanisms are supernatural. Or at least preternatural. They are outside of nature, whereas what you're talking about is hijacking nature. So, for example, human beings can only hear in frequency ranges down to about 20 hertz.
Yeah.
Below that, any noise that is made is called infrasound. That's what we call it. If you play with a speaker that has the right resonating frequency to play infrasound, which most don't, in the hearing of a human being, they can't hear it, and yet they universally report feeling like creepy feelings, like haunting.
Yeah.
It does something to us. We perceive it in some way that we can't consciously perceive.
It's like precognitive, postcognitive.
And it actually, it will make people feel like they're in a horror film and they don't even know what's going on. So it can be used as a psychological weapon. To me, that's just hijacking nature. That's not bringing in something outside of nature.
I guess I'm going to refuse the distinction between.
Okay, well, you're not allowed.
Well, okay, but so
we're going to fight early in this show. I see how it is. I saw you talk to Grizz yesterday.
True. So this is where I want to get into the mechanics. One of the things that's always struck me about stories in the Bible, in the New Testament, of demonic possession. And I think it's in Luke. Don't quote me on that. But, you know, when one of the figures that Jesus confronts, who's possessed, gets dispelled, released from the demonic possession, the body is described as coming out of a kind of permanent palsied state. And I've been thinking about this for the last several years. And why would a demon palsy a body? And like, how would a demon palsy a body? Again, we can just operate. This can just operate on the level of story. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to sort of come down one way or the other. But it's striking to me that one manifestation of possession is corporeal manipulation.
Yes, and that actually is true.
Right. I mean,
that is the theological understanding is, you know, just because they're incorporeal doesn't mean that they can't observe, you know, every little detail about about corporeal human nature and potentially manipulate it.
Right. And so I'm thinking, I'm thinking again, I'm spitballing here. I'm really just trying to suss this out. You know, and of course we're not given, the pre-story, we're not given the story where we see this kid, this man get possessed. Right. So we don't have that part of the story. So we can speculate pretty widely here. But it's just striking to me that the curse of the demonic possession takes bodily form, as if the demon can like pull on tendons and artificially constrict them. And
it makes people into puppets.
Right. Oh yeah.
If you've ever dealt with somebody who's possessed, which I don't recommend.
No.
Like they don't seem to be in control of themselves physically.
Correct. Right. And, that's why when I remember, we were actually watching season 4 of Stranger Things together when you were up in New Hampshire. And those scenes of Vecna contorting those bodies was just so visceral to me.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, like, even now I'm playing the images in my head and I'm like I'm possessed by them, right? In a weird kind of way,
Right.
cursed by them in an interesting sort of way. So much so that when you see it, like you feel that in your own body, like those images have that kind of power, like, these.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't mean to dismiss, even the possibility, this is part of the celebrity exorcist toolkit. I've heard Ripperger say it before. Where it's like, oh, well, yeah, they used to, heavy metal bands used to curse the master copies of their albums so that it would have, maybe that's a real thing. The closest thing that I have experienced to that would be, interestingly, because it's kind of meta, is the movie The Ring.
Yeah.
You seen that movie?
Yeah.
So the first time I watched it, like it was hard to watch.
Yeah.
But I was recently coming out of dealing with, working for a priest who was dealing with real demon stuff. And so it was a lot less scary to me than the real thing was.
Okay.
And so I got through it. It was tough. I don't like horror movies at all.
Me neither. I hate them.
I have enough things that make me anxious. I don't need that. But then I came back a few years later, maybe a decade later, and I tried to watch it again, and I couldn't get past 10 minutes. Now, the idea of this movie is, if you watch this tape, this VHS tape, you'll die in 7 days because it's cursed, right? And it's like this creepy girl that comes out of the screen and does whatever to you. But so anybody who has this encounter within the movie, who watches the tape and then, doesn't take it seriously, then later they find their bodies and they're in these horrible contortions and their faces are contorted into something it really like bothers me so much visually, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the second time I watched the movie, I was like, this movie feels like it's evil. It doesn't feel like it's scary. It feels like it's evil.
Yeah. There's a great scene in Dante's Inferno. I forget exactly which ring, but Dante sees a series of contorted bodies. I think it's with the diviners, those people who say they can see the future and all these kind of things. Anyway, it doesn't really, it's actually interesting, but not to our point. But he sees these contorted bodies, and if you're just kind of like casually weeding along and you're like, oh, another, bad story. Oh, another bad image, like whatever, you get kind of numbed to it a little bit. But this last time that I went through it, it's really kind of got fixated on this particular sequence. And the images are of the face, if the face and the body are in the, moving in the same direction, but that the face is contorted backwards, like perfectly backwards.
Are these Dore's illustrations or?
Well, yeah, you can see them. Dore has versions of this, but the way it's described is that the necks are palsied backwards, right? And so you can see the sort of the wrenched neck backwards.
The idea being it's the ironic punishment for trying to look forward.
Yeah, okay. And the Dantists, and even Dante himself calls this contrapasso, right? That the image is sort of the image befits the crime, something like that. That it's a meaning bearing image. But what struck me this time around is that, you know, Dante's deep into this thing now. Like, he's grown up in this long process as he's walking down the various circles of hell. And like, he's no longer a sweet summer child. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's seen some gruesome things, but immediately upon seeing these specifically contorted bodies, he breaks down in tears. And he makes the specific point that he breaks down in tears, not because he's sad for them exactly, right? But that the image of our maker is so distorted. And maybe that word distortion doesn't quite do it justice. You know, it might be one of those things where you look at the Italian and it might have a little bit more of a visceral punch to it. But the horror, and he's horrified by it, right? That the body, which is meant to image the divine creator, has been twisted and tormented in such a way that the image itself is a violence to God.
That actually makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and so what you're talking about with The Ring, watching it a decade later, that's so interesting to me. Like, you experience it as horror the first time around, but the second time around you experience it as evil, and like there's kind of a difference there.
I actually shut it off.
Things.
I was like, "This
so good. That's
is
so
making
rich.
me so uncomfortable."
Yeah.
And I just had like the hair on the back of my neck was up. Like, it was just not a good feeling.
Yeah. So again, and I know I'm using the word metaphorically, and so you're just going to have to go with me on this one. But metaphorically, then you had a visceral, spiritual allergic response to evil, right? That's a curse, the way that I'm using the word curse. And I know that there's a specific way in which, like, necromancers, you know, invoke spirits, and witches say the spells and all this kind of stuff, and fine, you know, but it becomes a kind of a curious vector for curse. Vector, not vecna, right? A vector for curse. So again, I know this whole conversation started because people are saying that if you go see Disclosure
Maybe
Day,
they're actually saying maybe they don't have any. They haven't seen it.
Yeah,
this priest hasn't seen it because it hasn't come out yet. I mean, he didn't. There were early reviews, but like, he wasn't giving a review. He was saying this could be.
Yeah,
like, don't speculate about stuff.
Yeah,
like
and that's pretty irresponsible. I mean,
in my opinion, yeah.
You
know, simultaneously, you know, the priest who said something similar, who was the exorcist in the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C., and was relieved from his position for saying it, I think that's not okay. You know, and he actually, I didn't watch Father Rehill's whole thing. I was just reading the captions. But I mean, this other priest, Monsignor Rossetti, like, he made it very clear, at least in the clip of the video of his that I saw, he's saying, this is my opinion. I don't know if it's true.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that this is the kind of thing that, you know, could be. It was a very nuanced statement and did not deserve disciplinary action. I think that was very clearly a political move.
Totally, yeah.
But I just, as these things aggregate, you just see more and more people who will point to them and say, this is evil, you know?
Yeah.
Because they don't want to actually think about it. They don't want to consider the evidence. They want
which is just so, it's hyper fragile.
It is hyper fragile, yeah.
But yeah, and that's my concern with it, is that it's sort of making somebody who's already predisposed to a kind of epistemological fragility, that much more, you know, and as you know, like, hyper fragile things, it's like, you know, all it takes is a little flick, and it's just like it crumbles, you know, before you. So why are we doing this to people? You know,
I don't know. I mean, nobody's obligated to watch anything that makes them feel uncomfortable, and I'm fine with that. I mean, I shut off The Ring because I felt it was wicked creepy, and I didn't want to watch it. Right, but it's like, but don't like get people scared ahead of time and then tell, and in the process, you're saying the movie might be the thing that scares them. No, you're scaring them.
Yeah, right.
Because how is it? You're essentially suggesting that somebody who lives an otherwise virtuous and holy life could somehow be taken over involuntarily
while they're munching their popcorn.
Yeah,
and
because they're
sucking on their
watching
ice
a
cold
summer
Coca-Cola.
blockbuster that's not overtly evil in any way. There's nothing about it that appears demonic. There's nothing about it that's intended. It's not a horror film. You know, it's like any more than Close Encounters was a horror film. You know, there are creepy elements to this for sure.
Of course.
And part of, I mean, you can tell from the trailers, Spielberg wants people asking the religious question. You know, he puts it in the mouth of the nuns that are watching the news.
Yeah.
You know,
in habits, by the way.
right? Which
LOL.
Those don't exist for the most part.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, the nuns are the ones saying, well, why wouldn't God in all of his greatness be able to create more than just us? You know, I think it's a valid question to ask.
Yeah.
But I think that's what Spielberg's getting at, and then it's getting turned into all this other stuff by people who haven't even seen it. And I just
so what just popped into my head, you know, is I know this word gets abused and overused, but there's an interesting form of Gnosticism that creeps in, and you know, this is you know, in some real way, social media seems to run on Gnosticism, and I am saying this, you know, to you. Both of us are I think we would consider ourselves likes to know guys. Of course, I like to know things. I want to know things, but it's just such a dangerous game when you put yourself forward as someone who knows things and you don't know what the heck you're talking about. Right. And I think my visceral reaction to that clip of the priest that you shared with me this morning, who's saying that the movie's cursed and all these kinds of things, is like, you're saying something that you just don't know.
Right. And that's the immediate reaction that I have too. Like, you can't know this.
In a collar.
Yeah.
Right. And as you know, as a former traditionalist yourself, as I know, as a practicing Catholic, like, that moves the needle.
Yeah, it does.
Now, not specifically for me. I have a certain amount of inoculation against that kind of hero worship. But, you know, you and I both grew up in a world where, you know,
the priest was basically Jesus.
Yeah. Right.
Like, what he said was what he said.
Right. And I mean, look, in alter Christus, I mean, you know, hello.
But I mean, look, this is the same thing, though, you know, without going down this road, that led to a lot of the sexual abuse was parents telling their kids who would say father had done something. Don't you ever talk like that about a priest. Don't make that up, you know? And so a lot lot of kids who have gone through that report being silenced by parents who don't want to hear them talking badly about priests.
And it's so funny. Like, I don't know about you. I think you were probably a little bit more susceptible to that than I.
Most likely. I mean, it was a very strong undercurrent in my
and
opinion.
I don't know why, like, I didn't, man. Like, you know, look, I have lots of my friends are priests. Yeah. My brother's I love priests, right? I mean, it's like, but I've never been prone to that particular tendency amongst Catholics to hero worship priests. I've always had a deep respect for the office. But for some reason, I've always had a little bit of gap in my imagination between the priest and John. You know what I mean? Like Father Jones and, you know, Bill.
There's all these cutesy little stories that get told in the devotional literature.
I know.
And, you know, there's the one that I remember hearing a bunch of times I think around college, where I think it was Dietrich von Hildebrand told some story about, you know, this guy and his guardian angel, and somebody could see the guardian angel and it walked beside him, but when he was ordained a priest, it walked behind him. You know, like, there's all these little, little things. And again, I could be totally apocryphal, but you hear this stuff.
Yeah. And it affects you, right? I mean, like, look, again, like, think about what I'm trying to argue about the idea of a curse, right? A curse is this thing that is kind of laid upon you, independent of your, like, choice, you know, like, it's sort of this extra agentic laying on, right? And so for me, like, why Freddy Krueger was a curse to me. I mean, it really was. I mean, I was scared
because it haunted you afterwards.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And look at our words, right? Yeah. Listen to the language that we use. Like, it's inescapable that we traffic in these idioms that may or may not have an actual or
Yeah.
literal or physical
No, I
meaning.
had that experience when I was a kid too. My dad had a bunch of old comic books, and one of the ones that he had was Creepshow by Stephen King.
Oh, yeah.
And there was this thing where, like, you know, this guy dies, and then they're celebrating his birthday, and he comes back as a zombie.
Yeah.
And he tears his wife's head off and
Right.
puts candles on it and
Right.
serves it to everyone as a
Right.
cake. It's
Yeah.
gruesome,
I remember
horrific
that. I remember
imagery,
that.
right?
Yeah.
But I was like 6.
Yeah.
I spent years afraid that dude
Yeah.
was coming out of my
Yeah.
closet at night. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it stuck with me for a long.
Yeah, the power of the imagination, especially in kids, those formative years, man, it's so real. It
Yeah.
is so real, man.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I don't know, like, for whatever, but you're exactly right that this was exactly the mechanism. If we're thinking about this in terms of mechanisms, this is exactly the mechanism which allowed a monster like Marcel Maciel to do what he did. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
he looked the part. It was a perfect
they
fake.
built a meat shield of good people.
Genuinely,
Yeah,
actually.
it's like they created a layer of really decent human beings that made the entire thing attractive. We're talking about the Legionaries of Christ. For people who don't know, you can look them up and find out about Maciel Marcial, who's one of the worst sexual predators in the church. I mean, like demonic in a literal way.
Demon. And you know me, like, I'm pretty
like they
slow.
tried to perform an exorcism on his deathbed and he wouldn't have it. Yeah.
He would not. Exactly. So I mean, that's the ultimate form of deception. I mean, honestly, like, one of the things that I want to say to these people who are talking about Disclosure Day as a sort of this mass deception, like, well, how about we, I don't know, clean house a little bit first? Might be worthy. That's a deception. And look, this is something like my brother, a newly ordained priest, like, he talks about it. He's like, man, yeah, it's wild. I wear my clericals because he does. He's one of those guys. And, and I know that people don't see me. Right. And part of it is, for him, he would say, that it's the humility of recognizing that I have forfeited Josh in some real way. The Josh who wants to, like, crack open a beer and just sit on a beach. Like, that's fun. Like, most of the time I'm sacrificing that for some higher call, right?
Yep.
As you and I would both say, right? But he also knows that when he walks in an airport in his clerics, a lot of people are sitting there looking at him as like, you diddle kids.
Right.
You
right.
know?
Or the other ones are just, they want to talk to him because they have a problem.
Right. It's like, oh, can you hear my confession?
They get both. Yeah, they get both. And there's a lot there, but there is a status, an authority, a representation that comes with that. And I just feel like we got to be more responsible about these things.
Yeah. So another word that keeps popping into my head here is hijacking, right? It's very easy to manipulate by hijacking, and the easiest person to hijack is the one that doesn't know that they're being hijacked. Right. My concern about the "it's all demons" thing is that you're actually not making them robust enough to handle the epistemological shock that is coming.
Yeah. And the people who will be hit the hardest are going to be the ones who have the most rigid, dogmatic understanding of things, because there's no wiggle room.
Yeah.
Like,
it's binary, right? It's binary,
I was interested in this before I left the church, but I feel like, in terms of being able to absorb the shock, I'm in a better place now than I would have been then.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to reconcile things that feel irreconcilable.
Yeah.
I can just say, okay, well, I have new information.
Now tell me this.
I have to figure out where it goes.
Yeah. Are you, we don't talk a lot about this, but, 2019 Stephen Cale would have been considered similar-ish enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. I would have probably called myself, conservative or I probably would have used the word orthodox, small o orthodox.
Right.
Whereas you found yourself in a slightly different vector or lane of traditionalism, the kind of would recognize and resist the R&R traditionalist. Do you think that, and I'm still that, basically, right? What I've joked to you before and others, maybe even on this show, that at best, I'm trad adjacent. But my sense from you is that the trads are much more fragile potentially in this deconstructive age of disclosure.
Yeah, 100%.
That's
look, the thing is that even for me, I started realizing that all the things that I felt obligated to defend, because it seemed clear to me that they were what the church had always taught, they were kind of suffocating. Like, I remember having a conversation with another couple. It was before 2019, but not too far before.
Yeah.
And these are people I had known, the husband I had been friends with for a long time.
Yeah.
And we were kind of talking about miscarriage, and I got into the church's teaching, that Alphonsus Liguori, Ambrose, Augustine, multiple ecumenical councils all said that, original sin alone will send someone to hell if they die with original sin on their soul. And that was interpreted by Augustine and Liguori as, hey, unbaptized babies, even if Catholic parents, don't get to see the face of God. They go to hell. And I was like, I don't like it, but that's what the church teaches. And I remember feeling obligated to defend this understanding because there was so much evidence that had been taught over and over again that it couldn't simply be dismissed.
Yeah.
And it was things like that it's like, as a parent who has lost a child to miscarriage,
same. We have to,
I don't want to believe that, but if I feel I am obligated to toe the line on things that are taught infallibly in order to attain my own salvation, I'm left with not a lot of room, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where you get into this epistemic corner that you can't get out of. You're like, I don't like this. I don't think it even makes sense. I don't want to believe that there could be a loving God who would do this to children who've committed no actual sin. But I mean, you have John 3:5. It's not just the church's teaching. It's, the Gospel of John says that if you're not born again of water and the Spirit, you cannot have eternal life. This is what this is based on. This is what the understanding came from. So there's a lot of those kinds of things that can be really, really personally challenging. And then when you get to a point where you have this collection of these very ironclad things, they're so hard that they're brittle.
Yeah.
And if something new comes along and challenges that, or if somebody like me goes, becomes an apostrophe, to use Father Krupp's term, and leaves and is a critic who was a former defender.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just don't think this makes sense. I don't think that the majority of people going to hell means that God is good and that, that he didn't even win. Like, did the devil get the high score on souls?
Right.
These things don't make sense to me. And people aren't engaging with you.
The high score. That's so good.
But I mean, why would Massa Damnata make any sense? Why would Christ's sacrifice matter if you lose the majority of humanity? That means the devil beat you at your own game. Like, I have such a hard time with that. But if I present that to somebody who's in that milieu, they don't feel like they can flex or bend or acknowledge the logic. They can only, they instead return with thought-terminating cliches like, well, we don't know God's ways. We don't understand that, And they try to hide behind that because they don't know how to make those two things work together. We have an understanding as human beings what love is, what mercy is, what justice is, what fatherhood looks like.
We experience all those things.
We use all those terms, we apply them to God, and they're like, well, those words mean different things when it comes to him. And I'm like, then they don't mean anything at all.
Right. Because when you disambiguate it from its, again, by definition, its source, therefore it doesn't mean anything. That's why That's why I have such complicated feelings about the council.
Yeah, I've developed some of those myself.
Yeah, it's like it's that weird, frustrating, annoying way that a church that claims what it claims about itself finds ways of unsaying things that it said.
It's the whitewashing that drives me crazy.
Yeah. No.
It's the arguments that I've had, with like Dominican priests online. Oh, the church never taught that. I'm like, here's 10 examples.
Yeah.
I mean, that you're taking that out of context. I'm like, I don't know how to take this out of context. It's pretty explicit.
Right.
What it really is we decided, wow, that looks really bad. So we're going to say something else now.
That's a bad look.
And we're just going to hope everybody forgot about it because it was hundreds of years ago.
Right.
But it's like, you can't just do that. You have to find a way to show, because you claim that you have continuity of doctrine.
Right.
Development of doctrine is never going to be a 180. That's just an abuse of the term development.
Right. Because then it becomes so elastic that it's ultimately meaningless.
Right.
I mean,
exactly. And so while I am grateful that the modern church has sought to soften some of the hard edges of the pre-conciliar church, they don't really know what to do with the fact that they also can't fully condemn it.
It's interesting to me when I think of these sort of churchy matters, that we do this very interesting thought shortcut. Like we do, okay, so there's like the Bible and the apostles, there's like the early church, right? And then we kind of hop, skip, and jump to Augustine, and Augustine just like wrote so much. And obviously he's a big brain. We have our bones to pick, fine, right? We can do that. I don't care. And then we kind of like skip on up to Thomas. And, there's like lots of years between Augustine and Thomas, like 800 years or whatever, more.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's roughly 8. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I always think that as the documents multiply and accrue, there's this pretense to clarity that is missing all of the noise, right? You and I talk about signal and noise, and one of our projects here is to try to find discarded signal. Discarded signal that was treated as noise, or at least maybe that's what I'm doing.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I just and there's just all this stuff that. It's like when you fall in love with an elegant equation. It's like, it's cool. Like when you have this really complicated equation and you can solve it, it's like, yeah, like that's awesome.
I would not know what that's like, but.
No, me neither. Come on, you're smart enough to track what I'm saying here, right?
No, I can. I'm just saying I've never had that experience.
Right.
Myself.
You'll hear math guys, right? And I've got a couple of.
No, I 100%.
Big brain math friends who like look at an equation and be like, "Oh, it's beautiful." I'm just like, "All right, dude, I'm just gonna have to trust you on this one."
I love and respect the fact that those people exist.
Yeah. I mean, look,
I am not one of them.
We're talking right now because somebody did that, right? Hundreds of miles away from one another simultaneously. This is kind of where I keep steering into the idioms, that we get hung up on the literal stuff, and like literal is good. Like there's nothing wrong with like the literal thing. But I think, again, I'm talking to myself probably more than anybody right now. But there's a way in which you can fall in love with the map and forget that the map is not the terrain, right? The map is great insofar as it helps you more fully engage with the terrain. But the church, and here I'm not even just talking about the Roman Catholic Church, I'm talking about the sort of the church, right? I know I'm going to get into trouble even with that. Sorry, folks, I have too many Protestant friends that I know love Jesus, so suck it. that we have fallen in love with our perfectly constructed maps, and rather than sending us back more fully engaged to flourish in the terrain, it has cut us off from the terrain. And the brittleness that you're talking about here, the hyper fragile world, sort of forgets. And again, I'm using the 800 years between Augustine and Thomas as a kind of symbolic stand-in.
Yeah.
Like, we just kind of pretend like those 800 years don't exist. Like, I think of the guy, I mean, we've joked about this before, but it's like, like the sola scriptura guys. And I know that there's even some nuance in that. So I'm not trying to slay fools or anything right now, but it's like, if you need to read the Bible to be saved, for instance, like Peter didn't read the Bible.
Yeah.
Polycarp, you know what I mean? Like, you start,
like, how many centuries of illiterate people couldn't read it, right?
Right. And I'm glad that we have scripture. Like, this is not an anti-scripture rant at all.
Well, we didn't have the New Testament for 300 years.
That's right.
I mean,
right.
That's the first 300 years after Christ died, we were still working on figuring out which books were real.
So, but were they saved? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, so you were talking about soteriology earlier. Like, what?
Well, look, I mean, this is the same thing that happens every time the church introduces a new dogma, because dogma, by definition, demands assent for salvation. You've just added a requirement for salvation. Like, in the late 19th century, suddenly, I had to believe in papal infallibility to be saved, but the previous 1900 years of Christians didn't have to. Like,
yeah, and I
how does that work?
I always think of some like dude in Turkey in like 200.
Yeah,
like did he swear?
Well, that's news to me.
Right. I mean, like, it just makes no sense.
No, you can't retcon this stuff.
That's right.
Like, it just.
Yeah, the retconning, that's probably the word I'm been struggling to find for the last 25 minutes, right? This willingness for Christians in 2026 to just retcon. I mean, I can't even retcon last month, Steve. do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But you're just going to retcon 2,000 years, just like.
You can retcon 2,000 years easier than last month, because last month is proximate.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
As long as the details are hazy, you can add a new thing like infallibility or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you can go back and say, well, look at all these examples of how it was already there all along. It's like, well, you're rereading history to try to find it, but is that real? Is that honest? Is that authentic? And if your mindset is, well, clearly this is what God, intended all along, and it just took us a while to get there. So it's there in the structure and it's there in the details. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't really know, because I don't think that's how it works. God is not using the church as a puppet show.
Cui bono, right? That's my question.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, I can't find mechanisms that demonstrate divine intervention to stave off error within the church. Like, in apologetics work, you have all these cute little stories of things that you think are demonstrative of a guy who was actually heterodox became pope, and suddenly he was super orthodox, and it's like, whatever. Yeah. And we also had John the 22nd, who raped so many female pilgrims they stopped coming to Rome. Like, there's all kinds of stuff in the history books, and you can find things that support your story, and you can find things that contradict it.
But again, look, right. It's like, people have jokingly, and we have accepted the charge of being red yarners, right?
Yeah.
Finding fact patterns.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. No, of course. I mean, look, it's what we human beings do. But I think a little bit of honesty is probably called for here, when what you're doing is you're creating ex post facto a fact pattern that you are creating right now. Yeah. Right. Like, this is what you're doing. And look, this is part of the way that we make sense of the world. So I'm not even throwing bombs here. I mean, look, one of my favorite novels of all time is Moby-Dick. Mm-hmm. Moby-Dick was published in 1851. I think it was Melville's third or fourth novel. And his first 3 or 4 novels were absolute bonkers bestsellers. I mean, he was the Steven Spielberg of American novelists, right? And, he was like the big tent movie guy, right? That's what he was. So in 1851, he publishes Moby-Dick. And if you've ever tried to sit down and read Moby-Dick, you know, as I said yesterday on X, it's a work of like, it's an alien work. It's crazy. It's totally
It's actually
crazy.
on my list of things that I need to get to because I never did have to read it for school.
Yeah. And you need to read it with people. It's like, it's, you know, so anyway, but it's a crazy work. I mean, it is bonkers. There's nothing like it. And what happened to Melville? Well, he publishes this in 1851 and it ruins his career.
Why?
Because people are like, he's crazy. He's crazy. Like, so Moby-Dick, now considered like the great American novel, or at least it's in the conversation. I do think it's the great American novel. Fine. It's ignored until the 1920s. Like people just had, like, what do I do with this thing? Like there's a chapter on cetology. There's a chapter in which they're like fingering the sperm and it's like very like weird and homoerotic. And it's like, what the heck is going on with this thing? So nobody knew what to do with it for almost 75 years. And then finally in the 20s, people are like, oh, wait a second. This is pretty good. This is wild.
What changed?
Well, right. So this is what I'm getting at, right? I think people's ability to perceive what they were unable to perceive. So for something happens in that 75 years in the social imaginary that allows this work, right? It didn't change. Like the work didn't change, right?
Right.
It's still the same letters. It's still the squiggly writing in black on a white page, right?
Yeah.
That didn't change.
It's not a new translation because it's in English to begin with.
Right. But something changes and shifts in the social imaginary that all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, this is like Beethoven's Ninth. Like it's that good.
Was it weirder than the late 19th century science fiction from Jules Verne and H.G. Wells and all these guys?
Again, it's 1851.
Yeah,
right?
But I mean, those were also late 1800s works.
All right, but still, I mean, I would argue that those 40 years matter. I mean, look, the 19th century.
I think those were late 1800s.
Yeah, you're right. The 19th century is a wild time of rapid transformation, right? I mean, you know, you go from like 1800 to 1820s, 1830s. You know, you go from horses and buggies and walking to like railroads.
Yeah, and then cars shortly thereafter.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, the modern world is birthed, you know, Paul Johnson, an historian, has a great book called The Birth of the Modern, The World from 1815 to 1830. And it's this massive fat volume. It's up there somewhere. And he just goes he just goes through all the things that changed between 1815 and 1830.
Okay.
And it's just mind-blowing, right? Speed, technology, transformation, globalism, like it all kind of starts in this 19th century, early 19th century. So anyway, my point is that something in the social imaginary changes so that what was unperceivable, what value is unperceivable in 1851, so much so that it ruins Melville's career. He spends the rest of his life a broken man, broken man, writing poetry in the hills of Western Massachusetts.
As a writer, that hurts.
Dies penniless, totally penniless, right? Only to be resurrected in the 1920s as like our Dante, right?
Do you have any specific suspicion about what it was that changed? I mean, one of the things I'll introduce here, and I don't know if it has anything to do with it because, again, I haven't read his book, but something that came out of this book, A Strange Angel, that I've been reading about Jack Parsons.
Yeah. Okay.
Is, you know, one of the reason we're interested in Parsons is because we're like, what does rocketry have to do with sex magic and the occult and Aleister Crowley and all this stuff?
And tech.
Because Parsons was in all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of dropped the book because I felt like I got far enough to kind of understand the provenance of that, because it's a pretty long book. But what was really interesting that I did not expect is when it starts to get into how Parsons gets into the occult, which has nothing to do with the rockets. What does have to do with the rockets, interestingly enough, and I think I mentioned this before, it's literature. He got into this because he was deeply obsessed with pulp fiction, with science fiction and fantasy, you know, like late 19th century novels like Jules Verne. Jules Verne wrote a book about going to the moon. And Parsons read it when he was like 12, and he's like, I want to build a device that gets us to the moon, right? And so he starts experimenting with fireworks when he's a kid and like taking the black powder out of them and figuring out ways. And, you know, before long, he actually starts working at a black powder company and becoming an expert on the chemistry. He's doing all this when he's like 19, like way before he gets into the occult stuff. But when he gets into the occult stuff, part of the reason why that even has a context for happening is because in the late 19th century, spiritualism becomes this huge force in Western society. And what the book claims is that the British Empire, you know, the East India Trading Company, all this stuff, going to the East, they didn't just bring back spices and silks and things like that. They brought back esoteric beliefs.
And so, you know, this is exactly what I think is going on with why Melville suddenly becomes intelligible 75 years later.
Because it becomes super popular in places like London, in places
Oxford,
like Los Angeles, to like get into seances and all these weird little cults spring up.
And that's the story that the 1950s destroys, right? When I always say that the bodies are buried in the mid-century, that's exactly what gets memory hold. All the big brains of the late 19th century, earliest 20th century were not materialists the way that you and I understand materialists. They were actually these like weird theosophists, right? It was wild, right? So I think, again, I need to work on this because I think there's a lot here that this tie-in between Parsons and Melville like is actually really quite something. But I can only just tell you that what keeps popping into my head when I think about Moby-Dick is that it's an alien work. And I'm using that word on purpose, right? Like it's a download, right? The way that you and I talk about the download.
Yeah,
right?
We need to do a whole show on that.
Right,
actually.
because Melville himself almost doesn't kind of know where this thing. In fact, he was planning on writing a kind of fairly bog standard adventure story, and he writes this thing, and he has this meeting with Hawthorne, and something I really should go back and do a deep dive into this. This is perfect. He has this meeting with Hawthorne, and basically he goes back to his manuscript and rewrites the whole thing. You know, he turns like a 200-page turner into this like 500+ page like wild thing, and like he himself kind of like doesn't know what he was doing. You know what I mean? Like,
and by the way, for the audience's context, there's this thing that Kale and I have been talking about for a couple of years. I wrote a piece on it at my Substack called The Human Download Consciousness is Way Weirder Than You Think. And it's because we have come across, both of us, a lot in recent years, this idea that a lot of creative people, inventors, artists, musicians, there is throughout the historical record this idea that they get their ideas from somewhere else. They feel like they're downloading information, like it came from somewhere outside of them. And then there's creative works. You know, Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Active Way of Being, is really, really great book. But you know, he talks about the idea that there are ideas sort of in the ether. And that we are antennas to varying degrees, and some of us are more sensitive. And some of us are less. But he says, you know, like an idea whose time has come, sometimes you'll have this great idea and you'll feel like, man, I should execute on that. But then you don't because something gets in the way. And the next thing you know, somebody else has gone and published this thing, music, art, whatever. And it's your exact idea. And you're like, how could they have done that? And he's like, because it's an idea whose time had come. And we're all able to receive this idea wherever it's coming from. And whoever executes on it first is the first one to, you know, get it out there. But it's a very strange phenomenon. And as a writer, I can tell you, I was actually talking to Paul about this yesterday because we were talking about flow state. I said, but beyond flow state, there is a point at which, you know, where I will sit down to write. And if the conditions are right and the distractions are removed, I no longer understand where, like, my fingers are typing, but I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah. I
Like,
totally have that.
either it's coming from somewhere deep within my subconscious, but I didn't plan this out.
Yeah.
It's just, I know what the next word is to write, and I keep writing it. And I don't know how that happens. And it's almost like being in a trance. Like, I don't notice that I'm hungry. I don't notice that I'm tired until I get through that main act of composition.
Faulkner famously was asked, why do you have all these characters do all these really strange and horrible things? And he kind of looks at the interviewer and he says, like, I don't know. He says, I don't know. I see a character and I follow him and I write down what I see. Right.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Right. And he's being cute. Right.
But not exactly.
But not exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. Right. So here's I want to put this out there. It has long been my contention that poetry precedes science. And I'm using science in that broad sense of like philosophical investigation. Poetry precedes science. Right. That poetry traffics in experience and science traffics in taxonomy. Right. And so Melville in Moby-Dick precedes the science, so to speak, right? I don't mean like, follow the science, but like he precedes the science so much so that it takes that much longer for the rest of us to kind of catch up with him, to have the ability to apprehend the power of his vision.
There's this thing this conversation is making me think of, and I don't know if it fits in here, but let's throw it in because I have no idea what the topic of this show will be at the end. We're kind of all over the place, but this is the best kind.
Ask Claude.
I'm going to have AI tell me what what the title of this show is after it reads the transcript. Yeah. But so this is this thing that, my old theology professor, Dr. Regis Martin, used to always quote every year, every class. It was if you don't know who Dr. Regis Martin is, I have such a good impression of him, but it won't matter.
It won't matter.
But he said he often used to quote H.L. Mencken's assessment that religion is not a syllogism, but a poem, right? So I looked it up, and it's from this essay called Holy Writ. It's really hard to find. It's 1923. So again, we're talking about that same period of time.
Yeah.
And he says this, and I think it's really interesting because what is Moby-Dick and all the spiritualism have to do with theology and aliens? There's a thread here, and we're trying to find it, right? So this quote is great. It's a little long. The Latin Church, which I constantly find myself admiring, despite its frequent astounding imbecilities, has always kept clearly before it the fact that religion is not a syllogism, but a poem. It is accused by Protestant dervishes of withholding the Bible from the people. To some extent, this is true. To the same extent, the church is wise. Again, to the same extent, it is prosperous. Its toying with ideas in the main has been confined to its clergy, and they have commonly reduced the business to a harmless play of technicalities. The awful concepts of heaven and hell brought down to the level of dispute of doctors in long gowns, eager only to dazzle other doctors. Its greatest theologians remain unknown to 99% of its adherents.
Yeah.
Rome, indeed, has not only preserved the original poetry in Christianity, it has also made capital additions to that poetry. For example, the poetry of the saints, of Mary, and of the liturgy itself. A solemn high mass must be 1,000 times as impressive to a man with any genuine religious sense in him as the most powerful sermon ever roared under the big top by a Presbyterian auctioneer of God. In the face of such overwhelming beauty, it is not necessary to belabor the faithful with logic. They are better convinced by letting them alone. Preaching is not an essential part of the Latin ceremonial. It was very little employed in the early church, and I am convinced that good effects would flow from abandoning it today, or at all events, reducing it to a few sentences more or less formal. In the United States, the Latin brethren have been seduced by the example of the Protestants, who commonly transform an act of worship into a puerile intellectual exercise. Instead of approaching God in fear and wonder, these Protestants settle back in their pews, cross their legs, and listen to an ignoramus try to prove that he is a better theologian than the Pope. This folly
Jeez.
It's 1923 and it's Mencken.
That's crazy. It's Mencken. It's Mencken.
Yeah. This folly the Romans now slide into. Their clergy begin to grow argumentative, doctrinaire, ridiculous. It is a pity. One more paragraph, and then I'm going to unleash you. A bishop in his robes playing his part in the solemn ceremonial of the Mass is a dignified spectacle, even though he may sweat freely. The same bishop bawling against Darwin half an hour later is seen to be simply an elderly Irishman with a bald head, the son of a respectable saloon keeper in South Bend, Indiana.
That's great.
Let the reverend fathers go back to Bach. If they keep on spoiling poetry and spouting ideas, the day will come when some extra bombastic deacon will astound humanity and insult God by proposing to translate the liturgy into American, that all the faithful may be convinced by it.
Man, wow. A couple things. Paul Vanderklay, opponent processing. You need to dig into that quotation. It's too good for you to skip. So, wow. When, just out of curiosity, when did you go and actually find that essay or read that essay?
So I put it into an essay of my own called The Problem with Dogma that I published in 2025. So it was probably around then that I went hunting for that quote.
I mean, wow. I mean, like you could have easily have just sort of published that as is at 1 Peter 5.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
right?
Again, it was in my head because Dr. Martin said it all the time, but all he said was
poetry.
Faith is not a syllogism, but a poem, right?
Yeah. And so that has long been my bias. Now, look, people are going to be like, oh, yeah, of course, Cale, you like that quote because you don't like to study theology. You like to study literature, whatever. That's silly. But there's something about the act of poesis, which is an act of making, right? That is sort of a reassembling and a reconfiguring of something in a new way that affords new perceptions of things, which then in turn can be syllogized. Can I say that?
Yeah, I think
in turn become syllogized, a taxonomy is offered, all those sorts of things. But we always know that taxonomies are no more compelling than an outline is of your favorite TV program, right? It's like, I can show you Star Wars. We can experience Star Wars, or I'll just give you like 15 bullet points about what happened.
Right.
Like what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So experience is interesting because what do we call the people? Experiencers, right? Experience, testimony, these things that we have learned to disregard because they're not, viable, scientific, whatever, right? Or philosophical, right? We're about to be flooded with a new era of experience, and we lack the ability to perceive poetry proper, right? I mean, this is sort of where I've been going in my head.
And we should really understand, I mean, as somebody who is a theistically inclined agnostic at this point, who wants to understand why other people find something compelling that I used to find compelling and no longer do.
Yeah.
What always ends up happening is eventually the person I'm arguing with will say they had a religious experience.
Yeah. Right.
And I will say that is fantastic. And I'm glad you had that, but that can't be universalized. That was for you, not having had that experience. So what's interesting though, is we can argue about theology.
Right.
But if you tell me I had an experience where an angel appeared to me in a dream or whatever, I can't argue with that. I can't say God didn't do that for you. Like that's just something that kind of goes in my pile of, okay, I can't explain that, but it matters because I don't think this person is crazy and they're telling me this.
Right. And as I think about what finally moved the needle for me, right, to open up this whole topic of UAP and disclosure, et cetera, I find the tech interesting, of course, just because, we're of a certain we're of a certain vintage, Steve. We grew up on the sci-fi stuff, so we love good tech. And who doesn't love a supersonic XYZ or anti-gravity? Like all this stuff's great and cool, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fan. But what really moved it from the realm of high quackery into something that demanded my attention was accounts of experiencers. and I didn't know how to dismiss them.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
look,
and I want
that's you're echoing
them.
Eric Weinstein, who's one of the biggest skeptics about this, you know, but he has this thing that he says, and he's now repeated it multiple times. He's like, I have talked to too many people. He's like, there's not a shred of hard evidence for this.
Yeah.
But I have talked to countless people who don't know each other, whose stories corroborate, who have, you know, Marlon Brando levels of sincerity. He's like, these people all deserve Academy Awards if they're lying.
Right.
They're credible people. They're serious people, and they've had these experiences. And when I listen to them, and I'm like, I heard that same thing from somebody else who doesn't even know you.
Yeah.
There's something there. And he's like, I don't know what it is, and it drives me crazy that I don't know what it is, but I can't pretend there's not something real going on.
Right. So therefore, right, we are going to have to figure out a way, and I don't know the way, Steve. So this is, you know, I'm not shaming anybody or us, but we have to find a way to experience testimony again. And like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't even really know what it means, but there's something about shared experience, right? That has been radically under-indexed by the sense makers of the world. And we need to find a way to do it. And, you know, this is why you and I, you know, loved movies as kids, right? Yeah. It's why we love, you know, I love teaching. I mean, one of the truly, the gift that teaching gives to me is that I can take a group of 15-year-olds, right? And I can read a book that I'm pretty familiar with by now. Obviously, I've been teaching it for so long, but that I can help Sherpa them into an experience that they didn't have prior to it, and that it can resonate not only amongst them, the kids, but it resonates like with me too, and with me and the kids together. Like it's an experience machine, you know, and it's like, you know, and there's always a point, right, in the class. Let's say I'm teaching Dante, right, and like one of the kids will just sort of like raise your hand. It's like, man, it's like, is this true? I love it. It's so great, right? You know, it's because it's so pure. It's
compelling in a way that you're like,
and I hate to have to be the guy who says, well, I mean, this is like an imaginative construction and he's working with images, and, you know, but I almost want to be like, yeah, man, it's real.
But it feels more like a theological treatise in some respects.
Right. But that's what I'm trying to get them through, right? I'm trying to get them through that. Right. And I really focus on the experiential quality of the poem. And we can talk we could have the taxonomic talk, and that's cool and interesting too. But it ultimately flies or flops on its power to provide an experience.
Well, I think that we have become,
which is why, by the way, Moby-Dick, right? Everybody complains about the big middle section where he's talking about like how to cut a whale, how to boil a whale, like how to do all these sort of things. And it's like, no. Like what he's doing is he's recreating for us, we landlubbers, he's recreating for us the experience of being on a whale, right? And of course, people are like, well, what do I care about that? It doesn't matter. Like when he writes it in 1851, the whaling industry is dying. Right. So it's not like a how-to manual, like, well, if you ever find yourself on a whaling ship, go read Moby-Dick. No, what he's trying to do is like, what does it mean for the neophyte to go through an experience for the first time? Right. I mean, it's about experience creation. The fabrication, and that word's an interesting word, right? Because it's like, it kind of means fake, but it also means made, right? But the fabrication of that experience, it's why we worship storytellers. It's why we worship, Spielberg, right? The ability to fabricate a story, in which we can experience together.
I mean, even that's pretty much all Jesus does in the Gospels.
Amen.
He tells stories.
Amen. Right. And even our experience of Jesus, right? Again, barring a direct, what do you call that? Barring like a direct experience of, a visitation or what have you, which, people have said, made those claims, that's fine. But like, for like 99.99999% of us, how do we experience Jesus? Well, we first experience Jesus by like the little children's Bible that mom reads to you when you're a year old. It's story. It's not didactic, not first.
To go back to something you were talking about, I mean, my default mode is empiricism because those are the tools that we have, is like, how do I gather facts and, create a preponderance of evidence that leads me towards a conclusion. But there are so many things that fall outside of that. And I feel like we've become sort of perverse in our empiricism because of the way that we discard anything we can't prove.
Yeah.
But when we're dealing with subjects that by nature can't be proven, it's like we've got to shift into a different epistemological mode. We can't. Yeah.
It's poetry, Steve.
I can't disprove religion no matter how much I doubt it.
Right.
But you can't prove it no matter how much you believe it. And so we wind up in this weird place in the middle of saying, well, what can we know? But this applies to many things. I mean, I saw a post the other day about like the election, the mayoral election in LA, and it appears very clearly to have been fraudulently manipulated. But if you can't prove it,
time to do some sketchy shit.
Right.
Sketchy shit. Yeah.
And so there's all these things that we do that rely on eyewitness testimony. And we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Our entire understanding of what happened during the time of Christ comes from eyewitness testimony. The reason why the church fathers are considered, the go-to authority is because they were most proximate to the people who were eyewitnesses to what happened.
Yeah.
And so this understanding of like in religion, in courtrooms, in, whatever, there's a lot of times where the only thing we have is not a picture, not a video, not a DNA sample, but we have somebody who says, I was there. We bring in character witnesses and we say this person is credible.
Yeah.
And then if we have nothing else, that testimony is evidence.
Yeah,
but now we treat it like it's not.
Yeah, the whole of it is predicated on faith, right? And we're trying to ascertain how much faith we can place into this thing, right? So it's like, you have the joke like Pixar didn't happen. Maybe the real quip is story or it didn't happen. Right. Which draws from your idea of the sort of this limited construct of what we can actually see and perceive.
Right. So to go back to Donald Hoffman or to go back to there's all this stuff that we don't know how to measure, and I'll interact. There's a guy, I really like him. He's a good guy, but he's an atheist philosopher. I think he lives in Spain. And he and I go back and forth on the UAP thing all the time. And he's always looking for hard evidence that can't be produced. And I keep saying to him, look, when it comes right down to it, we don't have a chance of getting to the hard evidence unless we deal with the testimonial evidence first.
Yeah.
Unless these guys can be believed, unless they can be granted, the benefit of the doubt and the level of credibility that we can say, this demands further investigation. We need to give them immunity so they can bring us to where the bodies are, like all this kind of stuff. Like we never get there. If we discount things simply because it hasn't been peer reviewed, not everything can be peer reviewed. I've told you before, I'm a devotee of the show, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And what I love about it is you have these scientists who are trying to perform experiments to provoke anomalous events so that they can try to measure it so they can get closer to understanding it empirically, but their tools constantly fail them. The drone battery dies and it falls out of the sky.
Which is itself a fascinating
the equipment,
empirical,
the heavy equipment that's drilling suddenly breaks down. Somebody who's standing near where they're working suddenly gets like their head starts swelling and they have to go to the ER. Gamma radiation comes out of something that Travis Taylor, one of the main guys on the show, first season, he gets a gamma radiation burn on his hand. He actually has to go in and get treatment for radiation poisoning or something like that. And it was because he opened a well and they go back with Geiger counters and there's no radiation. But he goes to the hospital and like, this is a radiation burn. And it's they were wearing dosimeters or whatever, not the Geiger counters, but just sort of the passive sensors.
Yeah.
And it went nuts right at the time that he got burned, but they got him out of there because it was a medical situation. Then they go back to try to measure it and it's not there anymore. Like, what do you do when the thing you're trying to study is elusive by design?
Right.
And there's so much like that.
I'm reminded of there's one of the Heraclitean aphorisms, and it's great. It's like, nature loves to hide. And like, you could spend a lifetime just chewing on that.
Well, I mean,
right?
I think Diana Pasulka says at some point in one of her books about how these craft are just not photogenic. Like,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So what I want to add to Heraclitus, if I could be so bold, is that what if supernature loves to hide?
I think it's very clear that it does.
Right.
I think it's very clear that it does.
Yeah, no, it's and so there's this kind of coy quality.
Yeah. Like you have a feeling it's real, but then you're like, well, how can I be sure?
Right.
How do I know what to believe in? I mean, the divine hiddenness problem is a problem
philosophically
for a reason.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what do? You're telling me to believe that there is a God who is love embodied in its most perfect platonic form. And at the same time, there are countless people who are begging for a relationship with that God, and he's not even answering. Like, how does that work? How do we make sense of that? It's not that they don't want to believe, it's that they need more to go on.
Yeah, like there's what does Paul says, we see through a glass darkly, but I want to add again, here I am adding to these magic. We feel through a glass darkly.
Like doubting Thomas, gets used as a cautionary tale forever, but the guy's still a saint.
But look what Jesus tells Thomas in the end. He's like, basically Jesus says, I get it. Blessed are those who later on will hear this story and believe.
Yeah.
Right. But he doesn't get mad.
Yeah.
He doesn't get mad at him. He's sort of like, yeah, dude, I totally get it. Like, I love that. It's like one of these little odd little quirks of the story, right? These little details that you're like,
and so you can't encounter the mysterious world without being prepared to be frustrated by malfunction in your empirical process, because it doesn't operate according to the rules that, physical substances do.
Yeah.
And again, I think of the overused Arthur C. Clarke quote, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
Like if you have a technology, like imagine, I don't want to get too nuts and bolts, but I mean, imagine that, there's some anomalous craft and it's using an anti-gravity field of some kind for propulsion, which is what's proposed over and over again how these things may move.
Yeah.
Well, what does gravity have the power to do? It has the power to bend light. So if it can bend light, what does that do to visibility? What does it do to your ability to take a picture? Why are the pictures always blurry? I don't know. Maybe the propulsion system is blurring the vision. Just like when you're driving down a hot road, you can see the mirage of the heat coming off the road. It distorts the light and suddenly things look weird. And you're like, I know there's not water on that road, but it looks like there's water there.
Yeah, like we've over-indexed our physical powers in a fascinating kind of way. Like there are things that can happen to our physical vision, our sight, our hearing, our sense of smell that belie material causation.
And so my guess
would
be that is about to come crashing into this new set of things that we don't know how to understand. Like we are being forced back towards mysticism because our science has plateaued.
Yeah.
And now we're encountering things like you don't even have to believe in the UAP stuff. Just look at quantum physics. Like what the hell is spooky action at a distance? What's quantum teleportation?
Totally.
Like what is the collapse of the wave function because of an observer mean? Like what are the mechanisms for these things that we're trying to study as science but don't behave the way we expect science to act?
Yeah, because we're all still sort of default Newtonians, aren't we? Yeah.
And it's like Eric Weinstein always says, like Einstein is our jailer. We have to defeat him, right? We can't believe that the relativity is the last word, in propulsion and in our ability to move through space. There has to be other ways. But if we crack that somehow, it's going to be surreal.
Yeah.
It's going to defy all the known laws of physics for the last century. And it's not going to be because it's not physics. It's going to be different physics that we didn't know about.
Right. And this time around, it seems like it's going to be even crazier than the move from Newtonian model to the quantum relativity model, because the Einsteinian model has been pretty darn impressive, right?
Yeah. But this is why I think that, what you said earlier about stories and storytellers if you don't approach these things with the mind of a storyteller, you're going to hit wall after wall. Like, I look at every time there's a scenario and somebody says, well, that's preposterous because this, like one of the things people love to say is there's no way intelligent life could be here from anywhere else in the universe. The distances are too far. How would they travel?
Yeah.
And the writer
so
in me
stupid.
is going,
Right.
oh, well, it's because they found a way to manipulate space-time, obviously. Like,
right. Or time.
Yeah.
Right. Time.
I don't accept your arbitrary definitions of how the universe works.
They just showed up in 1947.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Why is that your axiom?
I mean,
we have an historical record that goes way far back with all kinds of way crazy things. I mean, look, you made that cool video just the other day about
the Nuremberg UFO. Yeah.
It's like, okay, so maybe they've been here since then. There's a million different ways you could go with this.
My approach to things is when I see something that I don't know how to make sense of using the framework that I have, I ask myself, if I were writing a story about this, how would I solve the problem? What would I come up with?
Okay. So I'm rewatching Pluribus with my wife and my daughter.
Okay.
The last few days.
I haven't watched it in several months, so I'm a little hazy.
It's okay. What I picked up this time around is that you remember, like, she'll go and she's got this big whiteboard. It's this covered whiteboard, and it's where she breaks her story. It's where she breaks her story, right? And she pushes the story one back, and then she starts writing down, what do I know about them? And she starts like writing all these things down. And at a crucial moment, toward the end of the season, she runs out of her dry erase marker, and so she calls the phone. Hi, hello, Carol.
Zosha or whatever her name is.
Yeah, no, but she has to make the phone call. Hello, Carol. We'd like to help you out now, but given the fact you've been a complete twat, we just need our space, right? That's Carol's version of it, right? So anyway, so she requests a dry erase marker. So she goes out. She gets a big box of dry erase markers from Zosha, and Zosha
that's flown in on a drone.
Right. No. Zosha's back now.
Okay.
Yeah, Zosha's back, right? Yeah, okay. And she's like, "Are you writing again?" And Carol's like, "Yeah, I'm writing again." We're so excited that you're writing again, Zosha. Right? So you're like, wait a second. And she lies. Carol lies and says she's working on the next Wakaro installment.
Novel, yeah.
Yeah. And she starts to write again. And there's something about the alien, like, I just had an insight and I lost it. But there's something about this moment that the hive mind isn't creative, right?
Yes.
And that Carol, being the outlier from the hive mind, one of 12 people, right, that are outside of she has immunity somehow. They need her. What the poet can do. They need what the storyteller can do. And they're genuinely like excited about this. So anyway, I want to just kind of, you're talking about storytellers and like why they're necessary. Like, this fascinating moment in this series, this really cool series where the LLM can't create its own thing, right?
Right.
Now, my suspicion is that this will be the key. Storytelling will be the key out of the hive mind. That's my theory.
Okay.
Like that.
Do you want to elaborate on that more? Or?
No, I don't. It's just
a feeling
it's
that
visceral.
you have.
Yeah. It's visceral.
Yeah, because that's the power of a storyteller, is the power of imagination. When you tell me there's no way to make this make sense, I'll tell you there's half a dozen ways.
Yeah. Right. So in this moment, so she gives her the first chapter.
Mm-hmm.
She gives Zosha the first chapter, and Zosha reads it. And she's like waiting there, like, what is she going to say? What is she going to say? What is she going to say? Anyway, she comes back downstairs, and she's like, well, what do you think? She's like, oh, we really liked it. And then they start going through, you made...
the one character into a girl.
You made the dude, right. Yeah. And then they together go back and forth as to how they can make that actually work. And they both do it together. It's just this really cool moment.
Right.
right? Prompting and reverse prompting back and forth. And then they both figured out. And like, it's this weird moment of communion where the hive mind actually learns something that didn't exist before. The story is broken by Carol. It's just such a cool moment.
Yeah.
Such a cool
because
moment.
you have a problem, you hit a wall, and you're like, okay, well, how could I make it believable that we get around this wall?
Yeah.
And so when you're locked in to this very empirical paradigm, if you say space-time relativity is the final word, and then
Right.
you hear this steady
Right.
drumbeat coming up from physicists going, actually, at the Planck scale, which is, infinitesimally small, space-time doesn't work. It breaks down, which means it's not absolute, it's not universal, which means there's an edge that you can go around if you can figure out how to get there.
Damn, that's good.
Good. And so
that's
it's
so
like,
good.
But I mean, as a storyteller, it's your job to imagine what those possibilities may be. And it doesn't matter whether it's real or it's true.
Yeah. Right.
It matters that it's plausible. I mean, I have this novel I've been wrestling with for 5 years. I wrote a draft. I'm discarding most of it. I'm starting again. And it's an alien first contact novel. And the reason that I'm having such a hard time with it is because I'm trying to integrate as much of the real world stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
And kind of make it all fit together. But the one thing that it was just killing me is, how do I make sense of the fact that it appears that something or some things are here, have been here a long time, are doing stuff, are messing with us, are messing with our animals, are messing with our military, are messing with our nuclear weapons. But they don't just say, hey, we're here and this is what we're doing and this is what's going on, which is how this mystery is able to constantly be perpetuated. And then all these people come forward and, well, we've had these experiences, and it's like, why, what would make a race of alien beings or multiple races act in a way that seems so counterintuitive based on what we think we would do? Well, you've got to think differently. You've got to come up with a different explanation. You've got to come up with a reason. And I came up with a theory that I think will work. But I mean, I spent days and days and days just trying to hammer through, like, I can't make sense of this myself, so I've got to come up with something that sounds plausible. And in the coming up with something that sounds plausible, you may stumble upon a piece of the truth. And that's what the power of a storyteller is versus, a scientist who's just very epistemologically rigid. It's like, well, nope, these are the laws and it can't break those laws, so that means, ergo, this can't be happening.
Right.
And it's like, well, you say it can't be happening, but it just flew by you. So you're going to have to come up with something better than it's not real. So what you see a lot of these guys, the skeptics, the professional debunkers, they focus on whatever they can to try to, they literally act like storytellers in reverse.
Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't a UFO.
Yeah.
That was just a flock of seagulls. Like, they try to come up with these preposterous explanations to make something prosaic rather than to make it mystical.
And this is the move of the debunker, right? This is the classic debunker move, right? And so I want to kind of read you from Psalm 8 real quick and see how this strikes you in the context of disclosure and aliens, et cetera, et cetera. What is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with the glory and honor. You have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, even the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea that pass through the paths of the sea. Right? It's like, who are we that the universe is mindful of us, right? It's just so interesting to me. Because that's the crazy part of this whole God thing anyway, isn't it? Like, who are we that he gives two shits about, right?
Well, I mean, it only makes sense if, that he made us because we were supposed to share in something.
Yeah, right. And that
because the alternative is to be like, the deists that founded this country. Where you're like, God's a watchmaker. He's a creative force. He makes stuff, he sets it in motion, then he moves on. And I could see that being the case too. Honestly, it feels more like the experience that I have of the world. It's difficult to explain all the weird and the woo without some kind of mystical, supernatural, creative force. But I don't always see evidence that there's a personal God. And so it's like, but that's the thing. We don't know what we can't know.
Yeah.
Everything that we're doing in this realm requires a level of suspension of disbelief.
Well, and that's the theme of this, hasn't it been? We don't know what we don't know. And in a weird sort of way, storytelling affords us a kind of bridge and access as we plumb the depths of the story to answer this kind of weird hiddenness, this weird mystery, right? And we kid ourselves when we think we know everything.
I mean, even your Dante example is perfect.
Yeah.
Why are your kids asking you, is this true?
Yeah.
Well, because it's believable.
Yeah, it's totally good. Yeah, that's so good.
He's telling a story about something that, we have limited, even theological speculation about.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
And he's making it so compelling and feels so real.
So real. I was just saying, it feels so damn real.
That you're like, well, that actually would make sense. Like, if that's how it works, that would make sense.
Right.
And that is bridging a gap.
Yeah, it's so good.
In our ability to know.
That's so good.
And maybe it's wrong. I mean, I am sure a lot of this stuff is, and we can become misinformed in this way.
Yeah.
But it's why we kind of have to, I think we've got to wear the garment of assumptions sort of loosely and be willing to,
that's right.
to shake some of them off when they clash against other ones that seem more important, but coming to new information, really challenging information with, it doesn't have to be an empty cup, but it can't be a full one.
Yeah, right. It's exactly right. And look, it's like, think about all the things you thought were true, when you were 15. And I'm not even talking theologically here. I'm just the phenomena.
Just
being
the things
15.
you learn about the existence of, being a human being on this planet.
I mean, think about the things you learn as a dad, right? The things you thought before you were a dad and now as a dad. And it's like, man, like that is just a wild, it's just a wild constant of the human condition, which is kind of why I don't mind getting old, I have to say.
Say more.
I think we live in a age-phobic world. Everybody's obsessed with youth and everybody's obsessed with, like, I'm 50, but I look like I'm 40. I'm 60, but I look like I'm 30. And there's this, and it's a sickness, I think. But I think it's a phobia of wisdom. Is a sort of
I don't know. I think youth is associated with vitality, and people want to feel vital. They want to feel alive. I mean, take it back from like the Demi Moores of the world who are trying to look, significantly younger than they really are. Yeah. But just look at, like, you'll see these things pop up on the internet from time to time. Somebody in a movie was supposed to be 35.
Yes.
And he's got gray hair and he's bald, and it's like he's got gray hair around the sides. And you're like, that was supposed to be a 35-year-old? Like, really?
Yeah.
And now you're seeing, people in their 50s and they legitimately look like they're 35.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
What's the difference?
Yeah, like Brad Pitt's, I think, over 60.
I believe he is, yeah.
And it's like, what?
Right.
That's like crazy.
Like, that's insane that changed that much, and nobody really gets it. I don't know what causes it, but.
And I was going to say smoking, but he smokes. So, I mean, I don't know what he's doing. Right. But I do maintain that we have fear. Phobia is probably overstating it. I think that's probably what you're reacting to. But I think we don't know where wisdom is. I think that's what it's about.
No, I don't think we've had much institutional or generational wisdom in a while. We've been cut off from that for a while.
And I think that's Gen X. I really do think that's the predicament of the Gen Xer, the aging Gen Xer like us. It's like.
But part of it, don't you think part of it is a function of the fact that the world has been changing so fast for the past century that you can't get enough ground under your feet to know where you stand so that you can give good, wise advice? Because
that's good.
The wisdom from 20 years ago almost, doesn't apply now. And,
Yeah,
and I mean, across the board, like,
yeah, I mean, this is like the panic with like take something as pedestrian as college, right? It used to be that, you know, you studied hard, got into a good college, got a good degree, and you got a job. Well, that's not true.
Right.
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 You know, that you know, that script is done.
Any parent of teenagers or
Right.
college age kids
Right.
right now knows that they don't know what the hell to tell them.
Right.
You know, do they go to school? Don't they? If they do,
Yeah.
what are the conditions that make it make sense? Well, what jobs will there be in 5 years when they're telling us AI is going to take all the jobs? Like, all that stuff goes out the window.
Yeah.
And you know, again, you can apply this to multiple domains. You can apply it to relationships. You can apply it to everything. Like the way that the sexes are relating has changed drastically over the last 20 years.
Totally.
You know, the divergence between young men and young women when it comes to political beliefs, which, you know, inform the mate selection, like all these things, they've all just altered so radically that we're all free fall.
Yeah,
We're like the Wile E. Coyote, and we're standing
that's good.
over blank space.
Yeah.
And our body's falling and our head's looking down.
Right. And we're all like you know that device you just purchased from Acme is not going to work, right? Wiley,
it's not going to work the way you want it to, at least.
So you're saying
it might blow up in your face.
Right. That's exactly right. You know, that's good. But
Roadrunner is basically wisdom in this analogy.
Yeah,
I
think
can't
so.
Catch it.
Yeah. Right. And again, I want to sort of in a kind of refrain like way repeat what you said, you know, we don't know, and it's driving us crazy, you know, broadly understood. Personally, of course, too.
And so these ontological pressures that are coming from these two prongs, you know, as the UAP thing ramps up more and more. I mean, both of us, you know, have been around a while. We've never seen anything like that press conference that was this week. The things that were being said from the steps of the Capitol, you know, just straight up crazy stuff that you would think that people are on psychedelics.
Yeah.
And they're not. They're very reputable people. Those pressures are going to be profound, even if something doesn't like reveal itself. Just the knowledge that this is being pushed forward by so many people who are like, no, this is real. And if you don't accept it, you're going to get blindsided by it. Right. And then the AI, like, what is it going to do? What is it going to do to us? What's it going to do to civilization? Does it have the capacity to become conscious or not? Well, okay, what do we understand about consciousness? Like all these things that we're being forced to ask because now we're up against the wall. It changes the way we look at everything, I think. I
think so too.
Oh. Because we're being forced to ask questions that we've never had to ask, or we've never had to at least take them very seriously.
Yeah, it maybe was once a kind of almost a parlor game.
Like think about Blade Runner. You know, I rewatched the original Blade Runner a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it really holds up, but it's like, you know, this whole idea of the Voight-Kampff test and whether replicants can evolve to develop emotions or whether they can't, everything. I mean, this is 1980s.
Yeah.
You know, we're asking these questions when computers sucked. Like we weren't anywhere near that.
Oh, yeah.
And so you look at that then, and it's like you would walk out of that movie and be like, well, that was thought provoking. What, you know, what's on network television, because there isn't even cable, right?
Yeah, literally not even cable.
You know, and now we're actually dealing with stuff, and then we have people like Richard Dawkins going, I can't tell whether this is conscious or not. And it's like, how did we get there in 30, 40 years? I don't know, man. It's
I know. The speed.
It's not hypothetical. All this stuff that was just purely hypothetical when we were kids, suddenly it's like, no, it's real. And you're like, well, what do I do with that?
Yeah.
How do I plan for my future? How do I teach my kids to plan for theirs? How does this affect my life 5 years from now? How does this affect whether or not I plan for retirement? I mean, you have Elon Musk out there saying, if you're retiring in the next 10 to 20 years, don't even bother saving. You're not going to need to, because money's going to stop being an issue, you know? And you're like, well, he's the smartest guy out there, and he's proving that he knows what he's doing. But like, is that really real? Could that really happen? You know, we did the whole show on the AI super tsunami. We don't know if it's real or not. We don't know what to believe. I mean, honestly, the way everything is screwed up, I almost would rather believe in the robot utopia than in the alternative.
I know.
Because otherwise, we're going to wind up like out of a Cormac McCarthy novel.
the road.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I know. I think that's right. It's this is So I hope you enjoy the movie tonight.
Yeah.
I hope it's not cursed.
I'm pretty sure it's not cursed.
Yeah. I think you're good. So what are you going to do? You going to do a write up, or what do you think?
I don't know. I feel like it takes away from the experience when you go
I know.
for that.
I like to wait a little bit.
This is what I did. So I went to see Masters of the Universe a week or two ago.
Yeah.
Whenever it first came out. And I was like, you know what? There's a theater like 2 miles away. I'm sick of being trapped in this tiny little apartment. I'm going to go out and do something. And actually I was forcing myself to take a break from a project I was working on because I get obsessive when I work on videos.
Yes,
and I need to walk away sometimes. So I go and I see the movie. And with the convenience fees and everything, like it's $15 just for the movie ticket, right?
Yeah.
And then I caved and I got popcorn and a soda, like a medium soda, small popcorn. That was another $20, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, there's a few movies coming out this summer I want to see. And the Regal movie theater chain, most of them are starting to do this. They offer an unlimited pass.
Okay.
So for 3 months, for like $75, I can see as many movies as I want. And at $15 a pop, I only have to see 5 movies, right?
Yeah.
So what I may do is I may go see this multiple times.
I was just gonna say,
maybe once to enjoy it and then go again.
That's what I would do with that pass.
Yeah, that's kind of what I want to do is see, any of these things that I'm interested in seeing a couple of times. Because the first time you just want to experience it.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of what I've been doing with Pluribus. I watched it the first time as an experience, and now I'm watching it, and it's always fun to watch a movie. Like my daughter's really quite sharp, and she's like seeing things, and she just loves. She's just like, Dad, this is just great storytelling. I'm like, music to Daddy's ears, right? Because I don't push them hard on that kind of stuff. But it's so fun to watch it with her and my wife. They're like, oh, what's that? I was like, oh, notice that.
Now you guys have to finish watching Severance.
Yes, I know. It's on the docket. Because
those two shows, alone justify Apple TV.
Apple. Yeah, for sure.
They have some really good stuff on there. But I don't know, man. Like storytelling and storytellers, that seems to be the underlying theme here. But just to navigate all this stuff, like how do you absorb it if you're just brittle?
Right. And
you're
so
just locked in.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that, like, don't be scared, right? I think that we should see in such a way, not out of fear, but out of curiosity, humility. Skepticism is fine, right?
It's okay to be afraid if there's a reason to, but don't make that your default.
Yeah. And that's, I remember, one time you were talking to me, this was during your phase out at 1 Peter 5, and you were just like, Cale, you said something to the effect of like, Cale, I'm just tired of having to post one after another a version of, aren't you scared?
Yeah. Fear porn is everywhere. It is what sells. And outrage. Like take some time. If you are on any social media platform, take some time and look at how many posts you see where someone either explicitly says, where is the outrage? Because I see that exact line a lot.
Yeah.
Or there's some version of, like, you should be mad about this. You should be upset about this. Look at what they're doing to your country, to your city, to your race, to your whatever.
And sadly, sometimes that's real.
and sometimes, and the thing is, it's not that the stuff isn't upsetting.
Right.
It's that this is a shortcut in human cognition to hijack attention. There's this thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the graphic handy, but it's called One Sentence Persuasion, and it comes out of this book. The name of it is escaping me. But there's just a few things, like 5 things that you can do to persuade people within one sentence. So you can confirm their suspicions, you can allay their fears, you can throw rocks at their enemies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are the kinds of things.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
You look for those little subtleties, and you'll see them everywhere. Like, this is how the attention economy works, is it plugs into one of those things every time.
And I think it's important to remember in a bunch of different people will say a version of this, but in a strange sort of way, attention is a moral act, right? Like what you pay attention to is a moral act. And it's a little bit of a Vedic statement, right? It's a little bit, gnomic, cryptic even, but forfeiting your attention, to folks who would use and abuse your attention is worth paying attention to. Again,
Yeah,
I know,
I agree.
ironically,
I know.
ironically.
But it's noticing. There's this phenomenon I experience. I don't know if it's kind of unique to the way my brain works. I've heard other people have this too, where I have this meta observer
Yeah.
who kind of sits in the back of my mind and narrates things that are going on. So I can be like upset about something and feeling a lot of emotion, but there's this dispassionate voice in the back of my mind watching what I'm going through and commenting on it and noticing, like the effectiveness of whatever I just said, or is that rhetorically correct? Or like, he's like a little critic that comments on things. And I feel like in a way that's how we have to approach media, or all the information that we're being just fire hosed with.
Yeah.
There needs to be something, even if you're enjoying the video, even if you're like, I actually am outraged about this story.
Yeah. Right.
Like the stuff that's going on in Ireland right now. Grim Grizz responded to my question.
Yeah.
And said something about pay attention to Ireland. I haven't looked at it today, but it's like some immigrant tried to behead a guy in the street, and now they're burning down immigrant housing and businesses. The people are fed up. They're fed up with the violence, right? And so I'm mad about that. I'm proud of the fact that they're standing up for themselves. But there's also this feeling that I get sometimes when I'm going through all these stories and I'm like, what does my emotional engagement with this change? Like, what does that do?
Right. Am I getting played right now?
Because I have enough fodder for anxiety and worry and fear and grief and like, I don't need more. But that stuff is always so close to the surface. And when your themes are reinforced and when you're, when your buttons are pushed and like not everything's going to push your button because everybody's got different buttons, but there's some commonalities where like you post the right thing and man, it just goes nuts. And I realized that as an editor of a publication.
Yeah.
Very strongly. Like we would post positive, uplifting stuff. We would post some story about a pilgrimage or something about some cool thing that a saint did or whatever. And it was like 200 views, right?
Yeah.
Then we post some scandalous thing that a bishop does, 30,000 views, and everybody's talking about it. And it's like, we're all drawn to the train wreck. It's something in our nature. I don't know if it's because humans have a very strong pattern recognition for things that feel like danger because it's what keeps us safe.
I think so, yeah.
And I think that maps over to this. Anything negative is a possible danger. Anything that makes us mad, a possible danger. But beyond that, man, I don't know. There's something in us that just loves to have something to complain about, loves to have something to be mad about. To an extent that almost like we would be disappointed if a solution was presented.
Right. And, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, but, it has to, hopefully, you can find a way to anchor it into the zone of meaning for you. Right. And I think that one of the things you're asking here about, like, for instance, the story in Ireland is like, I care about it, I suppose, but like, while I'm busy paying attention to something that I have zero control over, or even skin in the game, except for the sort of most remote sort of way, what am I not paying attention to?
I mean, you were talking to Grizz about this yesterday on his show, about how the national steals all the attention where you have less power and control and the local gets completely ignored.
Yeah, that's right.
Because who cares about, who your councilman
is? Which is a flip of
subsidiarity.
Exactly. And the Dunbar number and all that sort of stuff. It's like, it's worth interrogating.
But because bigger stories have bigger resonance.
Yeah.
The other thing that we only got 2 replies to my request for questions, probably because I did it right before we went on the air. But the other one, just somebody said Anthropic. And I do think it's really interesting that Anthropic is simultaneously, pushing these models that are supposed to be so dangerous.
Yeah.
That like, you can't even ask a question like, is mitochondria the powerhouse of the cell?
Yeah.
Because it's like, we're not allowed to discuss biological information, But at the same time, so Anthropic is out there putting these models out, and then at the same time saying AI is going to ruin everything.
Yeah.
We need more regulation on AI. Like, why don't you regulate it? You're making it.
Yeah. Like, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah. But why are you pimping, the product and at the same time preaching doom and gloom about it? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, part of me is like, is this sales? Like, I mean, like,
I don't know if it is. I forget who it was.
Again, I'm asking.
Somebody replied to me on one of these things yesterday. I think it was a priest, actually. And they said something about how they don't really know what their ethics are. Mm-hmm. Like, look at the name Anthropic. Look at, look at what is it called? Effective altruism. Like, look at that stuff. They're trying to figure out what the moral position even is. And they don't really know.
No, and they don't have a worldview that will yield one, interestingly enough. I mean, they're going to have to go outside of their worldview to find one. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Good luck with that.
You looked it up, right? What is the origin of effective altruism?
The greatest good for the greatest number, something like that. But
where does it come from? As an ethical system, or like is it just purely materialist, humanist nonsense?
Yeah,
or, I mean,
there are some thinkers. I remember looking on the Wikipedia page on this one, but honestly, I can't hazard anything here.
Yeah,
but it's worth. I remember being struck by, my gosh, it's so flat. My gosh, it's so dumb. And not generative.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting is that paper you were talking to me about this morning that turned out it was a few years old, but this idea that AI recursively is feeding on, because of the increase in the amount of AI generated output, that as it continues to train for new models, it's consuming a certain amount of its own stuff.
Yeah.
And again, like going back to pluribus, they take over the humans, but they also eat the humans that die.
Yeah.
Because they're not allowed to kill anything.
HTP, human-derived protein.
Yeah. So what is that not, in a way, the metaphor for recursive?
Yeah. Like
AI is consuming the stuff that it's already taken. It's very, I don't know, man. We're in for weird days.
It is. Pluribus it's a smart show, man.
I think I should probably watch it.
There's a lot going on there. It's so rich. Just great storytelling.
Well, I mean, it's Vince Gilligan. He's a master.
Yeah. He's the real deal.
All right, man. Anything else before we go?
No. It's hot as heck here today.
I got a new HVAC system put in.
Look at you.
Mine was built during the Civil War.
Yeah, I don't have an HVAC system, so it's going to be a hot one today. But fine.
you're not below the Mason-Dixon line. So but so this new one got put in, and it's so quiet.
I love it.
My last one sounded like a jet taking off, right, with a rattling engine.
Yeah.
So this new one is in here, and I can't even hear it when it turns on. So before I got on, because the headphones just make me hot. Your ears are radiators, right?
Yeah.
So I just cranked it down because I'm like, it's not going to show up on the recording. This is great.
So you're in an ice box. That's perfect. Yeah. So I'll be fine. It'll be good. I'm gonna try to see Disclosure Day this weekend. So with one of the kids. So
that sounds good. All right, we'll meet back up and we'll talk about it next week.
Love it, man. All right, be well.
Sounds
Cheers.
good. Bye.